Call to order this regular meeting of the Planning Commission on December 12th, 2017. Would you please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just in time, Mr. Smith. All right. Mr. Baumgarten, could you please call the roll?
Yes. All right, Barnett. Tinguri.
Here.
M. Smith.
Here.
D. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Shadle.
Here.
Mr. Richardson.
Present.
Mr. Murad.
Here.
Ms. Kampolansky.
Here.
Ms. Buckler.
Here.
Okay. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. So the first order of business is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Mr. Baumgarten?
Second.
Can you call the roll on that?
Yep. Just a second. Let me note.
Actually, point of order on this, on the agenda. I guess there's some question on this hearing that we're supposed to do.
Yes.
So,
Quite a bit.
you want to fill us in on that?
My pleasure. This would be one of what the item on here would not constitute the public hearing required for this body to make a recommending vote to the City Council. This hearing, what staff wanted to do was we wanted to make sure that we had the residents that live nearby adequately represented in this process. What this hearing lacked was a mailed or a newspaper notice published, and so this obviously will not do as the public hearing. That will have to come at a later date set by this body. So this would be, if Commission still wants to go through with the hearing, this would be one of two opportunities for resident feedback.
We wouldn't call it a hearing, we'd call it a
couldn't we-
presentation.
Well, couldn't we just roll that into the presentation on the PUD then?
I think as long as we're getting public comment, it's important, either way.
I don't know how everybody else feels.
Well, there is no
Perhaps
hearing. We can't have-
motion
we
to
can't-
amend.
We
Can't
cannot
have
have a
it.
hearing.
We can't have a public hearing because it hasn't been advertised.
Correct.
So
But
would
we
it be a discussion item then?
It's a discussion item.
Yeah. But you could move to amend the agenda, and the mover could agree that it's a friendly amendment, and we could proceed.
Okay. So we want to, then I move that we change the hearing name to just be discussion.
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Do I need any further discussion on that?
Did the mover of the agenda agree?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was that you?
Yeah,
Yes.
I made the
Originally?
motion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
I
was
didn't pick up on
And
that,
Ms.
sorry.
Shadle was the second,
Yes.
so I think she would,
Right.
Absolutely.
all right.
So, can we call the roll on that, please?
Yes. Mr. Tangari?
Yes.
M. Smith?
Yes.
D. Smith?
Yes.
Shadle?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Murad?
Yes.
Kaplansky?
Yes.
And Buckler.
Yes.
All right, agenda is approved as noted.
Okay, so we have approval of minutes. They say the meeting of October 24th, but I think that was November, was it not? Oh, no, we
No.
canceled
No, we
November.
did
It
not
was
meet in
October,
November.
okay.
It was October.
All right, it's been a while. So, any comments on the meeting minutes?
Motion to approve the
Motion to
minutes.
approve. Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
There was a reference to a pork shop rather than a pork chop. That's on page 4, fourth bullet point. That was the only thing I noticed.
Didn't know it was a typo.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I was hoping I could watch these on YouTube, but the meeting wasn't posted as of this afternoon. There were a couple little items
Okay.
that I was hoping we'd clear up. On page 2, under site plan review, SP 10-17,
Yes.
at the top, you've got Kamal Shirak, and then the applicant Kevin Shirak. Is this father and son, or is it actually the same person?
Yes, the father is the
Father
owner.
and
The
son.
son was here.
Okay,
Yes.
because, well, one of them, the young guy, goes by Kevin,
Yes,
and father goes by Kamal, so this is consistent.
Yes.
right.
And I did wonder about the pork chop. There was one other reference in there, too. Under that same set of bullet points that contains pork shop on page 4, lighting, the need for photometric and lighting temps. Is that templates
Would be
Temperature.
color temperature.
or color
Referring to
temperatures?
temps,
Okay.
yeah.
And that would be the frequency of the color?
Yeah, exactly, yep. Measured in Kelvin.
That's all.
Is there anything else? Can you please call the,
Okay. M. Smith,
Yes.
D. Smith,
Yes.
Shadle,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes,
Murad,
Yes.
Kapelansky,
Yes.
Tim Gary,
Yes.
and Buckler.
yes.
Okay, motion passes.
So, Mr. Baumgarten, can you please let us know what we have for communications?
The items included in your packet are comprehensive, some of the correspondence we received up to this meeting, so.
Okay.
Should include emails from residents and such.
Okay. All right. Now's the time of the meeting where we invite anyone from the public up for any item that is not on the agenda, recognizing that we are not having an official public hearing, but we will have a discussion, it is a discussion item for the Berkley Coolidge LLC. So if there's any other items on the agenda, that are not on the agenda that you'd like to discuss, please come forward, state your name, and city of residence, please.
Chuck Terrell from Berkeley. I'd like to talk about applications that are approved with conditions. I did the research. There is no documented process to assure and ensure that conditions are met. Therefore, there should not be any approvals with conditions because there's no way in the world to assure that the conditions are met. So unless and until you come up with processes, documented processes, anticipate that there will be no more approvals with conditions.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. We'll close the citizen comment section. All right, the first order of business, site plan review, SP 12-17. I hope I don't butcher the name. Klaji? EB 317 11 Mile Road, north side of 11 Mile Road, between Gardner and Griffith Avenues, tax ID 2518-453-014, is requesting site plan review for a building expansion. I assume the applicant is here? Come forth, please. Yes, stand at the microphone, please. Can you tell us about your project?
Okay, I just got this place, so I'm trying to remodel the place. I'm gonna extend the place a little bit, like 15 feet. I'm gonna do some work outside, the inside too, remodel everything. Everything is gonna be by the code, so that's.
So, I suggest, do we have questions from the Planning Commission?
First, for everyone's reference, I thought we would just explain that this is, what is it, Nip and Tuck, right?
Yeah,
Former Nip and Tuck.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
just so you're aware of what building we're talking about.
Do you have any comments about The site plan review?
Only that I have very few concerns about it.
Okay.
Something might spark me.
Mr. Dean Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple questions. On your, well, one, welcome to Berkeley.
Thank you so much.
Two, on your sheet A1 of your drawings, one of your elevations shows an awning over the front and rear door. Another elevation, the south elevation, does not show the awning. Do you plan to have an awning
Yeah,
by
yeah,
your doors?
yeah. We're planning to have an audience.
And so you'll correct your drawings to reflect
yeah.
that?
We're gonna make another. My architect is working for all details. For inside and outside.
Yes, we have, the set of drawings we're working off of didn't show the awning
Yeah, I'm gonna have
consistently
an
through.
Yeah.
Your addition is a little over 300 square feet.
It's 15 feet.
Yes, 15 by roughly 22.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
330 or some. We had a note from the fire inspector that talked about there's no place for storage. And our codes don't permit you to store things in the utility room. Have you had a conversation with your architect about that?
We're planning to do more storage. We're just gonna keep until 4 o'clock. So we're not gonna keep. We're gonna get delivery every day. So we're not gonna keep much stuff in there. We have the place for everything. For the utility room and everything.
Your
Everything is
drawings
planned.
do not show a place for storage, so that's something that needs to be
Yeah, for sure. We're gonna
cleaned
do that.
up
For sure. Yeah. We're
prior
gonna do
to
that.
approval.
Yeah.
That's all I got, ma'am.
Any other comments?
I saw a letter from the applicant indicating he was going to revise his plans, and I was under the impression that he would not be seeking approval tonight. He would be seeking approval when he revised his plans. It was November 29th.
That was, I don't,
That was misleading. I don't think that was from the applicant.
I don't think that, I'm not sure what you're,
I did see a letter in our packet. I couldn't figure out what project it was attached to, so
It was not from this particular applicant, however.
Okay.
I don't believe.
I thought it was from the city engineer
Bless you.
regarding this project.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Right.
Yeah, indicating that he's waiting for some revised drawings. Now, I don't know if these are the revised drawings but there's no
date on these.
There's no, well, there is, you can't read it. It's right here, see, it's a blob right here. But, so I don't know if they have any comments, because that's what I took that email to read. They're withholding comments until they receive the revised drawing.
Matt, would you like to chime in here?
Certainly, Eddie is in attendance, our engineer, and I'm sure he can expand upon this comment.
Good evening, members of the commission. Actually, I believe Derek Schuler had actually put together a little memo regarding this project.
Right.
He had basically told us that at this point, HRC did not have to do the review because his comments were basically the comments that we would have had initially for this review. So we have not actually submitted a review yet on this plan. So basically, what Derek has in his memo is the only thing on record that we know of.
Is it reflective of the engineer's comments?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So there was, as you said, there were outstanding items.
Okay. All right. Are there any other comments, Mark? Do you have any other comments? Okay. Kristen?
Yeah, I just had 2 questions for the applicant. The drawings reference pre-finished cement panels and CMU painted. I just wondered what colors those were going to be.
It's gonna be gray.
Gray?
Green.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. That was all I had.
Mr. Smith?
Is your architect here tonight?
No, it's not.
Dang.
Yes.
Okay. I believe per code, you need a van-sized barrier-free space, which means your 5-foot aisle needs to be 8 foot. I believe. He can verify that. Plus, You have a dumpster enclosure in the back. We will need drawings of what that is made out of. Okay?
Dumpster, okay.
The dumpster enclosures, walls around the dumpster. And we'll need some drawings of what the construction is. And there's currently a grease container on the site. I don't see that indicated anywhere in your new plan. So that's another item. Right now you have 14 car, it looks like you have 14 spaces. You really only need 13. So I think you can accommodate the wider aisle for the van space, if I'm correct about that.
Okay.
And on the exterior, I also wanted to know what the colors were. The stone, is that a grayish?
Yeah, it's gonna be the same, yeah.
Okay, this is a cultured stone, which is stuck on the existing building?
Yeah, it's gonna stuck in.
Okay. There's an issue that comes up all the time, and I don't know if your project is, if this will affect your project. There's a right-of-way line, and some of these buildings are built right on the right-of-way line, some are a foot or so back. I don't know where it is, we don't have a site plan. If there's a thickness to this stone, it could be anywhere from a ½ inch to 3 or 4 inches, depending on what it is. So it's protruding over the right-of-way line. Now, in reality, it's not necessarily a big deal, but it is a legal property line. Also, you may want to ask your architect, for this cultured stone, it's a manufactured material. It's showing it dropping all the way to grade. Most of the cultured stone manufacturers don't allow that. They want it held up 6-8 inches from grade because it will wick up moisture and disintegrate. Plus, if there's any frost heave, it'll pop off. So you may want to talk to your architect about how to deal with the base at the first 6-8 inches of the stone.
Okay.
And our city manager is writing all these things down diligently, so you'll get a letter. But that's something, this will degrade fairly rapidly, and you don't want that to happen. We don't want that to happen, so you may want to get that
Yeah, I'm gonna
dealt
make
with.
sure.
And I also noticed that the comments by the engineers, the fire marshal had a couple comments, as was stated already. And I understand your answer. And he also mentioned about, you will have a hood over the
Yeah.
grill and everything? Okay. And there are several comments, 6 of them from our DPW director. And that the city engineer indicated that this is reflective of what they would have said. So this will be attached to the letter, if you haven't gotten it already.
No, I haven't got it already.
Okay, or if your architect hasn't gotten it already. Okay. It's not my business, it's not our business, but might be nice to have a vestibule in this building. I see you have 2 entry points. Probably don't want to put in 2 vestibules, eats up a lot of space. That's up to you. But on a day like today, we've all walked around, and some of us have been outside quite a bit today. Gets rather uncomfortable when someone opens a door and you're trying to eat your lunch.
Have you ever been to the Nip and Tuck now?
Yeah, there's no vestibule. I said it's not my business, we're just making a suggestion. So that's up to you, but just a suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that's all the comments I had.
Yes.
So on the front of the property, it is set back some off of the...
Is it? I didn't see. Did I miss
The
something?
existing building has some planting there. There's
Okay.
Yeah.
flowers
I
in
drove
front.
around the back, I didn't look at the
An
front.
awning.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
that's
there's
fine.
an awning, so...
Then
I
that one
think-
goes
I think-
away.
Yeah, I don't think that's a concern.
Good.
So
Thank you.
I echo you on the vestibule, and you kind of do have the space that you could potentially do
Yeah,
it if
but
you
that's
wanted
up to them. That's not.
But it's up to them, exactly. Other than that, I think you covered everything. I wanted to know colors. And then, again, the staff comments, so.
Right.
So we need to send this back to him, he needs to come back with a complete set, since we can't approve it.
Ms.
All right.
Chairman,
Yes.
one more comment if I may. I'm looking at a satellite photo, and there's a building next to you
Yes.
with a very long wall, concrete block. I don't see any bumper blocks along there, and
I'm
apparently,
gonna put bumper blocks,
Okay.
yeah, for sure.
for the 100 years Nip and Tuck was open, it hasn't been an issue, but just,
Yeah,
just
no.
in case. So that may be something to think
Yeah, I'm
about.
gonna-
Right here.
So, do we want to open up to the public for comment?
Madam Chair?
All right, more comments?
One other thing, how would you feel about moving your dumpster a little closer to the building?
I'm gonna do it a little closer because, I'm gonna try to put the way more parkings.
Yeah, where you have it right now is like a long walk from the building, and
Yeah,
it's
I'm
like
gonna
right
put it-
adjacent to a
yeah.
residence, which I don't think is ideal.
No, I'm gonna do it closer, yeah.
There's a big parking lot behind it, too.
Yeah,
Yeah, see,
it doesn't
here's a
bump up to the
Yeah,
house.
I saw that.
That's I'm gonna try to rent the parking lot the guy owns, because he don't use it, the building next door.
Uh-huh,
I'm gonna try to rent it if he rent it to me.
okay.
Has there been any discussion about opening that up, or is that there's
Uh,
parking blocks along there,
Talk
bumper
with
blocks?
the owner that used to be there, so.
It's a difference in grade, though, I think.
You have more comments, Mr. Smith?
Just while we got you up here, tell us a little bit about your restaurant.
It's gonna be a family restaurant. I used to own another one in a Royal Oak. We just sold. I used to be with partner. My partner owns the big coffee shop here in Berkley. So now I'm here. I'm with my family. We're all gonna work there. I'm gonna try to do our best. Everything is gonna be homemade. We're gonna try to welcome everyone. Of course, it's good for us for business, good for the people.
What kind of hours of operation?
It's gonna be 7 to 4, and Sunday is gonna be 8 to 3.
Any more comments? Okay. I'd like to open it up to the public. Does anybody have any?
Yeah, thank
You
you.
can sit down, thank you. Does anybody have any comments?
Kurt Height, 3525 Robina. I just was going to question about the parking. I was confused. I thought you mentioned 13 or 14, but it says it was required 33. Is there any concern that by doing the addition that you're, on the left side of the first page, it says required for that size building would be 33?
To answer the question, I'm not sure why it says 33 there, because when you do the math, it needs 13.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, it's most likely a typo, yeah.
Any other comments? Okay. So, I think with all the changes that are required, this needs to go back to the applicant for our next meeting. Do we need a motion for that, or can we just send it back?
I think we need a
Do we need a
motion.
motion?
do a motion
Do I have a
postpone, yeah.
motion?
I'll make a motion to postpone this, hang on, gotta find it. Site Plan SP-12-17, motion is postpone it, hopefully till next month. There's nothing earth-shattering here, but there's enough things that, I wish his architect were here tonight, because he could have answered a lot, maybe answered some of these questions. I think there's enough here to ask them to come back,
Okay.
and like we mentioned, city managers making a diligent list.
I'll support the motion.
All right, can you please call the roll, Mr. Baumgarten?
All right, motion to postpone. Mr. Chingari?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, Mr. M. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. D. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Shadle,
Yes.
Mr. Richardson,
Yes.
Mr. Murad,
Yes.
Ms. Kavalansky,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes not here, Ms. Chingari, and Ms. Buckler.
Yes. All right, thank you. We look forward to seeing you next month. Okay. And you're going to get a letter out to him shortly, correct? Mr.
Yes.
Baumgarten? Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
very good.
Thank you.
All righty. So, I have to be honest, I'm wondering how we do this next to enroll it into item number 3, because we're not having a public hearing. So, I hope the public can bear with me as we kind of work through this idiosyncrasy. I think we'll start with a brief presentation from the applicant on what has changed since the last go-round. Let's keep it to the point and detailed on what the difference is between this time and the October presentation, please.
Good evening. I'm Bennett Tarabello of Berkley Coolidge LLC. Appreciate the opportunity to meet with you again. Such a warm evening. Madam Chair, I'm assuming then you would not like to go through the recognizable benefits tonight?
No, I don't think the recognized benefits, unless there's design changes that impact any of the benefits, that would be a detail I think we'd want to hear. But the benefit, or if you've taken something away that impacts one of the benefits.
Sure.
And we can then go through them at the end and make a summary to make sure that we're all still on the same page. But let's start with the changes, shall we?
We have tried to listen to every comment that you've made and try to implement every idea. There have been some wonderful thoughts, and trying to meld them together has really been a difficult but enjoyable task. So from that, we're going to start with trying to show you the changes we've made to the elevations. The last time we met on the 24th of October, there seemed to be some thoughts about relative to ephes and color. And with that in mind, we have adjusted both. We are at a much lower portion of ephes, and we have tried to break up the colors in a way that has created a separate view from every different angle. And would like to just kind of run those through with you. This, the upper left being, that's I believe the west, that's the, yeah, that's the west elevation, and the one on the bottom is the east elevation. We'll get into some greater detail as we show you some closer ups of each of these. If we could keep rolling through those, Joe. We haven't changed anything as far as the interiors, other than the loggias. We're going to have, that would be on the upper floor, and on that upper floor, those would be open for lounging and have chairs, other benches, other ways of people to sit, relax, enjoy the open air. And for the months out of the year where it starts to get a little chilly, not cold, there'll be ways to enclose it as well with some blinds and so on. Yeah, through the site plan, we've added additional landscape to the parking field. We've added, I think you'll see some of the details as we move through through each of the landscape concentrations that we've created in the community public park, in the courtyard, in the approach on Coolidge Road, and certainly along the townhouses, as I say, in the parking lot, coming up the main drive and into each aspect of the approaches to the buildings themselves. If we could go to the driveways, Joe. Start with the front. And this is the front driveway fronting Coolidge Road. And from this point, this is again primarily a pickup and drop-off point. It could stack up to about 15, 18 cars. That's not what we're trying to do. There will be no parking there. So this is, again, just for principally pickup and drop-off. And Joe, if we could show a close-up of the landscape, please. Go back. There you go. And with that, I think you hopefully can recognize some of the plantings relative to the trees, to the coloration of the floral design, plantings, some of the other elements that we're adding that will be retaining, and other walls. This is we're bringing, the building will be at grade level, at the same grade as the podium. In this case, we will be also creating, I'll show you in a moment, of how we have taken the podium and tried to cover up that with some vines, as well as there'll be some other bushes that will help with that as well. But this is principally the view that you'll see coming to and from up and down Coolidge, whether it's north or south. And the access, again, is, we think, pretty easy. We will contemplate if we are going to permit left-hand turns from there, but that's a detail we're working with later. If we could move then to the rear, being the courtyard. And this is the courtyard entrance. The courtyard, I think, is there any way to blow that up a little bit? Okay. Perhaps, hopefully you have within your packages something a little bit more detailed and larger, but we're really taking great pride in this courtyard. It's going to be something, first off, every entrance point is going to have security. People will be issued fobs for electronic access, and that'll start off with, in this case, the gated security at the front of the courtyard itself. As you enter the courtyard, you'll be looking, our purpose here was, this is a fountain, and as soon as you enter there, and with the reverberations off of with the building in the courtyard, we're trying to create a serenity of a sound of the waters themselves. We'll have benches surrounding the courtyard. We will have barbecues. We'll have a fire pit with chairs surrounding that for gatherings. Some gardening areas for people to share in growing spices, growing vegetables, other things, again, for a communal atmosphere that we hope is really encouraged throughout here. And going further in, you'll see, again, we will have it within the entrance to the building itself. It'll have some additional security, again, with a fob for access. Same thing will be with the entrance to the podium, from the podium itself onto the elevators. This won't allow for outsiders to come in without somebody guiding and allowing them in. And as we move around the building to this is at the south end of the building, and on the north side of the main drive in between the church, we are dedicating a community garden and park to the city. And this will be made up of some elements that we feel very, very, very comfortably with. It's going to have marble stone tables that will be gaming tables, chess, checkers, any other kind of board games. It'll have an American flagpole for the dedication to our veterans. It'll have a plaque for the memories of all the historical value that Our Lady of La Salette School has brought to the community over the years. It will have some artistic design to it in the form of statues, other elements that we'll reach out to the community for as well, if there's some participation perhaps with some of the schools or other local areas that we can also, whether it's on a part-time basis and revolving them. These are other elements that we will try to incorporate into it. The Detroit Institute of Arts has a program where they do loan out statues and other artworks for display for timing, and that's something, again, we'll pursue. You'll see at the far left, the trash receptacles are further not just not just contained, but blocked by a considerable amount of trees, and the elements of trees, again, hovering over the whole area. Again, public benches, and then ultimately, we will be looking to relocate the bus shelter that's at the north side of the project and move it into this portion here. We'll more than likely be replacing it with a newer design that is more basically fully glass and transparent. And this will be the main view, certainly, from coming northbound upon Coolidge. And we think it's going to be something very special. And again, this is for the entire public's use and will remain that. We will maintain it. It'll be something that we see a long term of use for the city for that purpose. As far as the building, I'm sorry, let's go back to the townhouses if we could. And the front of the townhouses, there was some thoughts relative to the type of townhouse. Do we go with brownstone? Do we go with something that's more akin to what is Berkeley's principal image? And that's we decided to kind of tie two together. So we're getting some brownstone in here. That's the coloration of the brick, but we're breaking it up with the sides and the gables, the windows, the other elements. Within the lower area, they will have a porch, as well as there'll be a little alcove for people to sit, essentially behind some brush, but on their front lawns in a table setting with to have their cup of coffee, read a newspaper, whatever makes them comfortable in that regard. And the shakes will be, again, the cedar shakes will be of different coloration, and we hope to break up some of the character and design that way, so it's not as much of a row housing, but some individual identity to each of them. The back side of it, there was, again, we thought some very good ideas relative to making it more useful, so we have added the deck across the back that will be available to each unit. And this deck is looking over, yes, it's over the parking lot, but we have done a considerable amount of landscape improvements within the parking lot itself, our main parking lot, to make it something that will be not just a sea of black that they're going to be looking at. We haven't changed anything in the interior of the units themselves, so I don't think there's anything to go through. And I think if we just shorten up in that regard, we have, yes, all the photometrics are complete at this point. This is showing both on the site, on the apartment building and surrounding areas, the podium itself, where we will be, it'll be fully lit. But again, we've been very conscientious about trying to make sure that the light doesn't spill out through the podium itself, where we do have some grills, basically a trellis that it'll start a little slower, but as the vines start to grow up, we think it'll be a real nice look to completing it. We don't have any light spillage in any portion of this, whether it's behind in the parking lot, behind the building itself, in the western portion of our shared parking area with the church. And this also incorporates the same lighting design and materials as those on the what the church is going to be improving on the south side of Harvard. And there was, Ms. Shadle was curious about some of the amenities that we were going to offer, so just like to run through those just as a reminder. And with that, within the building, we'll have a fitness center, a yoga center, club room with TVs and other media and tabled seating areas. meeting rooms and workspace for telecommuting working employees, a library and reading room. As I mentioned before, the 2 exterior loggia areas. And those, again, will have chairs, tables, lounges, and the enclosure so that there's about a 9-month usage throughout the year. Full balconies for each apartment. And again, we are small pet friendly. The amenities upon the grounds, I'm going to be repeating a few of these, but again, starting off with point 1, security. It'll be electronic entrances to the main entrance, the fence courtyard, the courtyard entrance itself, the podium deck parking. We'll also have bicycle sharing programs, the common gardens that will be the community gardens. We'll have also, the common gardens we have within the courtyard will be for sharing, for interaction of growing of spices, vegetables, I mentioned before. The courtyard itself will also, as I mentioned, there'll be benches, plantings, walkways, barbecues, picnic tables, fire pit with surrounding seating. We'll have bicycle racks that are very convenient, and we plan to encourage that as much as possible because we are going to be offering a bike sharing program where we will provide bicycles, and hopefully that is something that will, again, encourage a much greater use, not just of the immediate area along Coolidge, but throughout the pretty much the entire community. Most will have a lot of covered parking for many of the residents themselves, and that'll be done as something that we haven't fully defined yet. We will more than likely have some assigned parking, and with that in mind, with those assigned parkings, obviously these ones in the podium will be more exclusive. We'd like to try to aim that more at those who need it most, being people that are more senior, but it's something we do need to work further out, and we aren't at those details just yet. On the community park and gardens, again, as I mentioned before, we'll have stone game tables for chess, checkers, or other board games, a plaque of historical reference to the significance to the community of Our Lady of La Salette School, flagpole dedicated to the sacrifice of our veterans, artwork comprised of an array of statues and other displays, benches, tree plantings and flowers, and the bus shelter. And those are pretty much the updates that we've made to the drawings themselves, some of the coloration and so on. I think we need to go in some better detail as we show you the materials. And unless anybody's got some questions in between there, we would like to show you the materials that we're going to be working with.
Sure.
First and foremost, this brick that we're using is the same brick that is installed on Ford Field. So this is meant to stand the test of time. And we're not talking about just decades. It's a long, long period that these will stand for.
Okay.
This is pretty much the palette for the townhouses.
Oh, sure.
The final colors that are available to us in this package.
Okay.
This is basically a brick, and the 2 bricks are selected. I dropped it on the frozen ground and knocked a couple off. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I hope it'll be better set than that on the building.
We hope so. This is actually the backer board for it, and this dropped too, and it stayed. Okay. You asked about the weeping.
That's how I do brick.
membrane last
Oh,
time.
sure.
This is a fully adhered weeping substrate. It goes behind the insulation that's between this and the building and keeps the building in perpetuity dry. The brick is a fully faced brick. Mary Pace is the company we
multi-dimensional material. It again goes on the building with a metal backer. It's a nice combination of materials. And if we have the desire to eliminate the drive-it, we'll be glad to put the white combination or another combination of brick in the middle. You know, they're both very durable systems, and it's the pleasure of this board what you want to live with.
The ephes itself has some insulating factors in there that we do want to use it as, certainly as accents, and again, the colors give us a little bit wider of a variety, and we think there's some nice complements in here in the coloration, and hopefully you don't have any problem with our choosing of the colors here and how it, and Marty, I think you had the greatest amount of input on your thoughts on coloration and breaking up the design. And with that in mind, I'd like to ask, you know, what your thoughts on any of those members are through the chair.
We'll get to that after the
After
public,
the public
yeah.
comments.
So I think we would like the public comments first, and then we would like to grill you after, or discuss with you afterwards. So let's, we're going to open the floor. As usual, I ask that your comments be brief, if possible, and if the comments have been made previously, certainly be conscious of that. This is not a public hearing. Your comments will be recorded, but this is a discussion. So request that you, if you've not made any comments before, certainly come on up. If you've made comments before and there's something new that you dislike or like, please let us know so we can continue to help the applicant refine this. So please approach the microphone, your name and city of residence, please.
I'm back again. Is that building there will oscillate? Used to be, that's what you want it to look like? Okay. You're going to tear it down, right?
Yes.
Completely?
I'm sorry, well,
You're going to tear it down, right?
should we be, through the chair?
Yeah, well, this is a discussion, so certainly I think that you can answer directly.
I'm sorry, Jim, could you ask me?
You're going to tear it down, right?
Yes,
That building's built like Fort Knox, you know that.
we know. Believe me, we know. It's been,
When you load up the trucks to tear it down, what route are they going to take? Are they going to take any side streets?
no,
Are they going to take
absolutely not.
Coolidge? Are they going to be tarped?
Oh, yeah, has to be.
Okay. Not going to be overweight? Because if you are,
It will.
'Cause
yeah,
if you
I mean,
are-
There are regulations to how many trailers, how many pounds, or should say tons. But there's also some of it, what we're contemplating is breaking up at the site to use elsewhere upon the site for some of the fill of, for stone purposes.
okay. Joe, you're going to help me out on this one a little bit. Going west on Oxford, just right back there where the entrance into the parking lot is. Okay, yeah, right there. What's going to be the width of that? And I'm speaking with vested interest because how can a big fire truck get in there and make the turn to go, if here's your building, here's your, whatever you're going to have condos here, and there's going to be your townhouses. Now, with all of the design and everything, you got the gardens and everything in there?
Yes.
How many fire hydrants you gonna have in there? Are they gonna be commercial, are they gonna be residential? How can them trucks make those turns in there?
We-
Have you ever tried, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
it's okay, it's a questioning, and I'll be able to answer your question.
Have you ever tried turning one of them trucks in there?
I've never driven a truck, no.
Okay. Well, that's something you're gonna have to take up with public safety, but I live 2 doors away from all that. And I look at what's happening in California right now. What's to say it's not gonna happen here in Berkeley? You get something like that burning on a nice, hot summer day, and Eric is living closer than I am, there's a good chance that those sparks and embers can, fly anywhere. There's only 2 fire hydrants on Oxford right now. One down by Kipling and one down by Coolidge. Not far. How many are you going to have inside? How many are you going to have outside? Because you're talking about a copious amount of water. Because right now you only got the church and the school to worry about. When you put all that other stuff in there, you got a lot to worry about.
We met with, if I may answer now, we met with Public Safety, we've met with the Department of Public Works as well, and we have discussed all those elements. And first and foremost, the trucks, the fire trucks themselves, should they ever have to come in, will be coming in through this area here. What we have is what's called a crash gate right over here. The purpose of this entrance is merely for access for the condominium townhouse owners here. And with that in mind, that prevents anyone from using this as a thoroughfare to get all the way through. But for fire trucks, this meets requirements for their turning radii. There are computer programs as well as other ways that is studied on the turning radii, all kinds of different vehicles, whether they're semi-trucks, cars, and in this case for fire trucks especially, or any other kind of emergencies. We've talked about the need to add additional pressure. We will be adding a water loop system that will be dropped about in this area right here. And with that in mind, it will be an increased water line. It will have a higher pressure. We will be testing it. And additionally, we will be identifying the locations of the fire hydrants that we will be installing. All of them will be of commercial size, if that's what you're concerned about.
Okay, could you go back to where the new building, you want Coolidge and Oxford?
You mean the photograph?
We have 2 situations going on now. When we had the last full rain, 2 inches just in the summertime, a lot of areas around there got flooded again. I understand, and it's just hearsay, that Coolidge and Oxford, you're going to have to do something to make that more water accessible. Every time it rains, you can go down there, Coolidge and Oxford, it floods, backs up. With all that you're going to put in there, how are you going to add to our infrastructure that can't handle what we got now? 2014, I got flooded twice.
I get to answer?
Can we-
Okay, so, yeah, we can answer. So first and foremost, there is no stormwater retention on this site other than minor divots in the elevation of the pavement. So this new project would require them to put underground storage that meets code, which is more than what is out there now. So they're going to have to meet certain storm limitations. Off the top of my head, I can't recite those, but there will be underground storage and detention as well as retention for stormwater. Now, all the stormwater
all the
from last,
parking lot.
that's from all this, from this whole site redevelopment.
Even the
Right
new
now,
parking lots across
the
the
water
street.
just flows, it has
clarify
nowhere to
that?
go. Go ahead.
They have to provide by law, by code, detention, storage underground. In this situation, there's no room for ponds, that take on 100% of the water based on factors, 100-year storm, whatever it is. That I don't know.
Yeah.
But they have to
the-
maintain on-site 100% of the rainwater from all the paved areas, including roofs. Now, that will in fact improve the situation in the neighborhood. Because right now, all the pavement, all the roof drains, everything just flows into our sewers. They have to hold that on site, and then that is metered out at some varying amount of
After the
of a
storm.
throttled after the storm into the system. So this, and this, they're not unique here. Everybody has to do this now for new construction all over the state of Michigan and who knows where. In urban, suburban urban areas. So their rainwater, instead of flowing into the existing storm system, will be detained on site underground and then flow out into our storm system at a very small rate. So it will help the neighborhoods. And much like also the parking lot to the south and the parking lot in the south of Harvard will also have the same thing. So, you know, it's no guarantee that basements aren't going to be flooded, but in essence, this development, as far as stormwater, will help what's going on in this general area.
So that's going to be able, excuse me, to handle all the water?
100%.
What about the snow?
Well, let me, if I can just add to a couple of statements that both the Chairwoman and Mr. Smith have said.
The green roof.
You have, what's in existence in the city of Berkeley is what's called a combined system.
No, it's gone.
Old, antiquated. Unfortunately, a lot of older communities had adopted that many, many, many years ago. Everything just went into the sewer system. First thing we're going to be doing is separating the systems. Stormwater and sanitary systems will be separated. So even if there was, hypothetically, a terrible storm, the water that would be coming back from the storm, and I'm going to explain in a moment how we are going to try to rectify that, but even if it was, now at least it won't be the sanitary. In other words, what came from your toilet, from your garbage disposal, or anything else. That's going to be separate. So there is that element of it itself. We will be putting in oversized piping. We haven't finished our plans. Again, this is something that until we knew or know where the building is going to fit, we couldn't come up with a preliminary engineering plan or complete enough of an engineering plan to say exactly the details of it. But generally, in our discussions with your outside engineering consultant, Hubble, Roth & Clark, Derek Schuler of the Department of your Director of Public Works, what we've talked about is utilizing oversized pipes, and what that does will collect a lot more water within them. As they narrow down, there will be a slower discharge, and then ultimately it'll go into, as Chairwoman Buckler had suggested, an underground detention system. We will be building underneath the parking lots an area of piping that will zigzag and will go deeper and hold that water. So there's retention and detention and a slower discharge of the water itself. So we will be filtering, moving along at a slower pace, holding it, and then when the systems can handle it, that's as it starts to release. Unfortunately, elsewhere in the community and in this whole area, and Berkeley was, as far as I know, the only one who got hit the last time about 2 months ago, whereas in 2014, as you probably all know, everything was underwater. All these communities here, Madison Heights, Warren, and everywhere in between, Huntington Woods got there's Royal Oak. This will take I can't say anything for the remainder of the city of Berkeley, but this portion of Berkeley will be improved, and that's our intention.
And another concern I have, and then so do my neighbors, and I talk to a lot of them, talk to them all the time, is the parking. You can assure us that there's not going to be any overflow parking onto our side streets, and we're not going to have to put up with all that traffic coming out and going westbound and
We will have, and I think to address first Oxford, where you are most concerned, at these points here, we are going to, and there was interesting, somebody had mentioned about the pork chop before. This is something we will be installing. Pork chop is a directional tool that you install in at an entrance, an egress or an egress. And what it pauses for somebody, unless you're going to be driving like a big semi, I shouldn't say that, but something along the line of a military vehicle, you won't be able to drive over these things. So you're going to be forced, in this case, to make right-hand turns only no left-hand turns. There will be signs posted, no left-hand turn onto Oxford. We are going to do everything we can to discourage any movement whatsoever onto Oxford. And at the same time, we are going to discourage any movement from Oxford into the project. And in reverse, on Harvard, and you can start to make out a little bit of the detail here, where you see that this is sticking out, this portion here. That's going to prevent people from making a right-hand turn as readily, and it's really going to force them into a left-hand turn. And same thing again, signs, we'll have crosswalks, other elements we're going to try every which way. And this is, again, with public safety, being the police department. We'll be working hand in hand with them. And you have a new director, chief of the department, and we will be working directly to try to solve these problems in advance. And this is something also that we're going to insert into our lease agreements to dissuade anybody from upsetting the neighbors, or our neighbors.
Those are great ideas, and I like them, but I feel sorry for the people out on Coolidge.
Well, we did a traffic impact study, and through the traffic impact study, it was extensive, and in the end, the words were negligible. Coolidge is built for more traffic than it holds, and this is from professionals
All right.
and your city.
And we're aware of that. That's all been posted, and I appreciate that. So,
That impact study you did it this year? Or was that the
Yes.
one 2015?
this year.
Did you put counters out there? Did you count the counter? I never seen one out there.
It was this past fall, late summer, early fall, and it was part of our workshop, our work session. And it's been posted, I think it's still posted on the website, is it not?
I believe it should be everything's
I think it's
contained on
posted
that.
on the website. So, I mean, there's a science around traffic studies, it was done to engineering standards.
I'm sure as things go along, I'll have more questions, and a lot of other people want to have questions too, but I think the biggest thing is the parking. How can our infrastructure that's not working right now? I mean, it's working, but we're concerned about the overload, everything else that's going to add to it. You know, some of us got flood 2 or 3 times, and it's quite a discussion.
Mhm.
So,
Sure it is.
no, sorry if I took up so much time, but
No, that's fine,
you know,
that's fine.
few of us here that live at ground zero, and
Mhm.
you know, nobody's telling us anything, so we'd like to. That's why we're here.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
all right,
Mhm.
thank you. Next?
Wendy Zabramski, Gardner Avenue. Following up on what Mr. Cox asked you about the radius of turning those fire trucks in, according to Pete Kelly, the fire inspector, it says that the fire apparatus turning radius at the southwest corner of the townhouse building is just adequate for existing apparatus, but likely to be too tight for new aerial apparatus we are in the process of acquiring. And then number 3, while the landscape plans do not identify shade trees in the courtyard garden area of the apartment building, over time, large trees would inhibit aerial device access to the major rear of the building.
Thank you.
Kurt Height, 3525 Robina. You know, first of all, you know, when I see all the pictures in the aerial view, you know, you have to say, we still have to agree that this plan, this site plan is so much further along and so much better than the original one. So I do want to, before I start, I want to applaud that as far as, you know, thank you very much. I do like that. You know, back to the, you know, them talking about the aerial, the new apparatus that they're going to buy. That kind of ties in with everything that I want to say as far as, I still feel that the amount of development on this property is a lot, and I think that kind of adds to how much parking is required, the shared parking. And I just feel that, you know, when they mentioned the landscaping that they were going to do that kind of will hide the parking from the people on their balconies that live in the townhomes. I just don't understand why that couldn't be applied if you just remove the townhomes and put landscaping on Oxford. And that would allow you to have all of the parking that you require for the apartment building, which looks, pretty nice. I will get to one thing on it in a moment, but it would allow you to put all the parking that you require for that site on that site without any kind of shared parking. And like you said, he could use landscaping to hide it, so if the neighbors were concerned about the parking that's been there for years, there's still going to be a parking lot there, but it would actually look more appealing. And then also, by doing that, if you remove the townhomes, you wouldn't have to worry about whether or not you can get the fire trucks in there or not, around the townhomes, because they're not there, they're not impeding it. You could actually probably almost close off Oxford, except for maybe a crash gate to get, if they needed to get in there for in case of a fire. So I would be really happy to hear that they remove the townhomes, because I think you remove that, and I think that amount of development, you could justify that amount of development for that property. And like I said, you would eliminate the necessity for a shared parking agreement, and then all the questions that arise from it, like, in the total number of parking, we're still including the land bank number, which I thought from the very beginning we talked about, are we going to pay it, are we not going to pay it, are we going to include it, not include it, and somehow it just doesn't seem to get brought up anymore. Now it's just part of the drawing, and it's there. There's dash lines, but it's grass, and I just really, I'm not comfortable seeing that. And again, that's solvable. If you got rid of the townhomes, I think this would be a lot better plan. Now, the second thing I wanted to get onto is when you look at the aerial, which again I like the look of it, but now it concerns me because it looks like now this is a 6-story building. So I think this is, the measurements are not quite there as far as it's kind of you can't really read the number, but to me it looks more like it's a 6th floor rather than a 5-story building, and so I want to, I'd like to see some discussion on that as far as the feelings. And the one last thing is when you were guys talking about the courtyard in the back, I'm not sure if if you know this, but Berkley doesn't allow fire pits, right? So
It's waiting for that one to come up.
Fire pits, you're not.
No
Hey, I
fire
stole your
pits.
thunder, but I wanted to do that. I just had to.
Electric fire pits are okay.
Yeah, like,
To me.
Gas is probably okay.
Oh, hey, but I like the sound of it, but you mentioned fire pit and. Okay, I just want to be clear, but.
What's the difference?
Really, please. Thank you. No, but if you got rid of the townhomes, please really consider that, because this site plan is starting to shape up, and I really, you would clear up so many things as far as the questions for the parking and stuff like that.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So I'm going to go back, because we seem to have a lot of more comments of our try to keep it to 3 minutes rule. It's hard to do from up here because we want to make sure everyone's heard, but we also want to make sure you make your point, and we're getting it the first time you say it. So, all right, name and city of residence.
Patty Curtis. I live on Kenmore in Berkeley. The city's master plan, page 60. While the mixes of building types may change over time, Coolidge Highway will continue to provide neighborhood-based retail and service opportunities for residents. The city will seek assurances that the operation of these businesses will be compatible with nearby residences. In some ways, which I'll bring up, this doesn't fit with the city's master plan. It's not an impossible thing to achieve, but as is, it doesn't, based on that statement in our own plan, which is in effect.
Excuse me, can you explain why? I'm not.
Retail? No retail, number one.
Well, there's a lot of retail in Coolidge, and I'm not arguing with you, but I would think that the retail people north of here would be happy to have 130, 140 new residents walking up to their existing retail rather than seeing more competition. That's just my opinion, and I'm not arguing.
Okay,
I'm just
well,
making
there is
point.
currently a 3% vacancy rate for businesses on Coolidge with the outdated buildings that are there. They're all occupied. There's no reason to believe that Coolidge cannot handle additional retail with a 3% vacancy rate, which was provided by our DDA director. In fact, if this contained modern constructed retail, it would probably help stimulate the updating of other buildings along Coolidge.
No, we've already identified too that the site couldn't handle the parking requirements for retail.
Well, that's why I'm saying perhaps this site needs to be adjusted to allow
No,
retail.
and if somebody wanted to develop strictly commercial or retail, the site might not be able to handle the parking requirements.
There'd be a small strip center.
With
and
this
that'd be it.
giant apartment building and the townhouses, yes. Is that what you're saying? With this building as it is?
Well, no,
Yeah.
even if they made this building smaller, it wouldn't handle it.
Can't designers design something that
Sure.
can? Okay, so you're saying with this building, you can't allow retail?
That is what I said.
This particular site with this
It's a
development?
parking issue. You need
I
more
understand that. No, that's what I'm saying. This site, well, wait a minute. What I'm getting back from you is that this site plan, as it is, cannot handle retail because it doesn't have adequate parking. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if the site plan were to change, that would allow retail, which would comply with our city's master plan that was adopted, then what I'm saying is this building doesn't meet the city's objectives as outlined in the site plan, in the master plan, rather. That's number one. And with regard to the vacancy rate on Coolidge, there's no reason to believe, as I said, that Coolidge couldn't handle additional retail and perhaps welcome the competition and encourage better development. What I'm saying is I don't think 100% residential in this spot meets the city's objectives as already decided under the master plan. This development isn't contextual to anything surrounding it. It'll tower 4 to 5 stories above everything else, including towering over the largest building over there, the church. The only other one that's taller is the Oxford Towers, which is a, 50-year-old building now? A small downtown area, and this area falls under DDA capture funds. It should have some conformity in building size and appearance. This is a small downtown city, and to interject something this huge and this tall is irresponsible. Townhouses, to bring up what Kurt had said, they are there solely to fill the recognizable benefit criteria of having mixed types of housings. What if they don't sell? If they don't sell, are they going to be allowed to rent them? And then poof, there goes the whole idea of mixed types of residences. Townhouses are problematic to me. The reality is an apartment building could be built on this site with conventional zoning or rezoning. Rezoning, because I know it's not zoned for apartment dwelling. And in a way that won't negatively impact the surrounding community. Essentially what I'm saying is you could build a smaller apartment building by simply rezoning it. I believe that this is presented as a PUD solely to avoid zoning ordinances, because you can put an apartment building in there, you can put one in with retail. They want it too big for the site that zoning wouldn't normally allow. The community garden and the bus stop park serves what purpose? Who will be using this park? I don't see it. You know, the drawings are deceptive. It's not a very large area. I guess I just don't understand it. If there was retail on the first floor of whatever is developed here, it would be more of a benefit and make more sense. Who are the people that are going to be using it? The dumpsters next door to it, what is the frequency with which they will be required to have these dumpsters emptied? Because what I see there is in no way adequate without daily emptying for a complex this size.
I think that's what they said in the past.
Every
It will
day?
be daily emptying.
Okay, thank you. If necessary, is there going to be any, okay.
We don't know yet.
All right, well, here's something that I want to bring up. I was going to throw this in here, but I made some notes. The city is now looking at a contract with this developer. And I've heard him say, that's the second or third time tonight, that he says, we are going to try to do something, or we will look into it, or we will provide it as necessary. And I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with my city government entering into a contract that says, yeah, we'll try, or we'll look into it, or we can't make any promises, but this is what we think will happen. That is not acceptable under a PUD. That, you can require anything of this developer in order to get what he wants, and you should be asking for it, and you should be pinning him down on this stuff. And I want to encourage you to do that. I think you're headed in the right direction, but it's not there yet. This is a pet-friendly building?
He said yes.
Okay.
Small pet, he said.
Where is the dog walk and pet waste area?
Where is it now in the city? It
Well,
seems to be my
here's
front
the
yard.
problem. As in my job in another city where I enforce codes, this is a common problem with I get called constantly out to apartment buildings with complaints about pet waste. And to expect people to share a courtyard or green space with dogs is unrealistic. Because people are going to let their dogs outside, they're going to take them on the leash, they're going to poop. You're going to have receptacles separate for pet waste, and you're going to have the materials there, and you're going to have some sanctions against them. You're going to have the equipment, and it's got to be convenient. And that's going to be a problem for the city and the city code enforcer, I can tell you right now. Under the original plan, all the water detention, I want to get to what Mr. Cox was saying, is it still all the detention is underneath the shared parking area? There's no detention.
Under all the parking
All
areas.
parking.
Was that adjusted from the original one? Because I know
Always been there.
It has not been engineered yet, but it will be all over.
underneath
probably.
the
Oh,
the
yeah.
entire thing will be gutted in detention plans. Okay.
Any of the upgraded parking areas will have to meet the new detention.
There will be an underground, what we are discussing right now is the holding areas, the detention areas, underground detention here, as well as here.
So it'll,
We've added an additional area.
that's what I was going to ask. I wanted it, because I know originally it was only in that,
Right,
the
because it
newly
can't be
constructed
under the
parking.
building.
So water will be detained there, flow into this area, and then you said as systems allow, it'll flow into all of this eventually will go into the city sewers through Harvard. Through Harvard, correct?
And the
Oh,
county.
And right, but I mean, it's going to go on the city street and into the sewer system that is shared, and that's the primary area where everybody flooded to, and Harvard Commons.
I will only note our city engineer is present for some of these discussions if it be fruitful.
Okay, one more point. Snow. We approved a PUD for Harvard Commons, which required that they truck the snow away. And as the residents around can attest, that was not sufficiently done during last year's minimal snow. What they ended up doing was pushing, and this is what they did today, they pushed the snow up to the back. They did not remove it. 4 inches, 5 inches, the expected 4 more may not be a problem today, but it's the piling up and piling up. At what point does it become incumbent upon the property owner, the developer? How is the city going to do this? Because going to make sure that they follow through with their plan. Is the plan here to truck all the snow out?
We will come up with a plan.
Okay, first of all, unacceptable, unacceptable.
I mean,
We
we're
will
not at that
come up
point,
with
we're
a
not at that
plan.
point in the
Not at that
design
point.
process
I know,
yet.
but
I
I'm
mean,
just
to be
saying,
fair, until
we-
they get to that point.
We do hear a lot of that, and that should be something that, I mean, snow is a reality here, and it should already be decided. I'm sorry, at this stage in the game, we're looking at next month potentially going for a public hearing, and why nobody knows yet, and you're asking for resident input, why nobody knows yet where the snow is gonna go, and why they can't.
It'll be plowed to the sides, and then it'll be removed as it needs to be removed.
Okay,
Simple as that.
and is there,
Exactly what lane are they gonna go down first, I can't tell you. What
that's
lane they're
not,
gonna go
that's
down
not my
second,
concern. What
I can't
happens
tell you.
is, what's happened at Harvard Commons is
I
they.
can't speak for Harvard Commons.
If you let me finish, I'm going to speak for it. What happens is they push it up against the perimeter of the complex. And that causes water, as the snow melts, to enter into the neighboring, they push it right up against the fence, and it enters into the neighbor's yards, causing additional water problems. I think most people that live adjacent to this site would not be agreeable to you pushing it along the perimeter of the property. If you want to put it on your own, up against your own building, that's fine. But pushing it along the perimeter of your neighbors, you cause problems for them.
I might address that for a moment. First off, there is a topographical aspect of this property.
Mm-hmm.
And in most areas, most of it leans to the south and west, which goes towards the Great Lakes. In this case, that would more than likely be protection for you, because if we were to put something up against our property lines,
Mm-hmm.
it's only gonna melt back onto our property. So if you're
Do you have any
concerned
idea
about-
right
if
now
you're
where you will
concerned-
push that snow?
No, right now we don't have.
Okay,
a
that
plan.
answers my question. That's a big, big deal to the
I agree
neighbors
with
at
you.
Harvard. And I want to see an answer that's firm, and I want to see an answer that's enforceable, because what happened now, you may not be aware, but with Harvard Commons, the residents last year, and I can see it happening again this year, have to call the city and ask them to enforce the terms of the PUD, because the developer did not arrange for it to happen as agreed to in the contract they struck with the city. So don't make it incumbent upon the citizens to ask for the conditions of this PUD to be. Get it in writing, get every stinking little detail in writing, because we don't want to be victimized again like we were with that last PUD. There are a lot of mistakes that can be learned from there, and this is so much bigger and has so much more potential to damage neighboring properties and affect their daily lives. All right? And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Eric Wheeler, Oxford Road. I can tell you what happens right now with the snow that's plowed from the parking lot. The snowplow drivers, unless someone is intent on supervising them, they figure anything is fair game. There may be, in the future, trees parked there, shrubs, and they think that they're watering those things for the spring. Because what happens, I share the fence with the parking lot, and a lot of times the plow drivers will ram piles of snow against the fence. I don't own the fence, but still suffer when the fence essentially caves to the snow being pushed there. So, you know, unless there's some sort of guarantee that that's not going to happen, you're going to see a lot of that landscaping compromised by that sort of act. Essentially, my vote is still no on this project. I think that it's too much for that site. A lot of the concerns that you've heard expressed, I agree with them. I think you're being plied. I think you're being played by pseudo-patriotism. You know, we're going to put a flag here, and we're going to have a memorial here, and that really is meaningless. It's a way to try and get an emotional appeal on this when that's not the issue. The issue is that this site is being overbuilt if this goes through. Mr. Tarabella said at an earlier meeting that they're not in the business of failure. Well, once they build this, they will have succeeded, and any problems that come with it will then fall to the city, to the residents. You know, Coolidge, as it is, given the width of the street, given, you know, the need for cars to turn to utilize the businesses and the residential streets, can get quite congested, and you're talking about adding another 100 or more cars coming into that mix. There's no traffic light at Oxford, and the one being at Harvard means that cars coming south pile up against that. It's not that long of a block that there is spacing of that traffic there. So I think this is just a bad idea, and I hope that if something is developed there, it is scaled back quite a bit from what is proposed. Thank you.
Chuck Terrell from Berkeley. We're talking about the traffic studies. It's my understanding that those studies were done prior to the announcement that they're going to have left turn signals now on 11 and Coolidge. Is that correct? All right, then the traffic studies are
Let me-
virtually meaningless then, aren't they?
Not at all. This project did not just, the left turn signal project didn't just appear.
No.
It's been planned for quite a while. It was taken into account during the traffic study, so it was
So
accounted
The
for.
left turn
Yes,
signals
both-
were included in these traffic studies.
Both the applicant's contractor and HRC, our engineers, both reviewed it with that in mind, so it was absolutely accounted for.
Okay, thank you.
Chris Riley, Oxford Road, Berkley, Michigan. It already takes sometimes 5 minutes to turn left from Oxford onto Coolidge, and now he wants to direct every single car out to turn onto Coolidge to turn left there. That's going to be backed up past the apartment complex every single rush hour. I'm telling you right now, it takes sometimes 5 minutes to turn with just one car. I was behind 3 cars once, and it took me about 10 minutes to turn. So that there shouldn't even be an exit or anything on Oxford Road without a light there to direct any of that traffic. That's just absolutely insane to think that 100 or 200 cars couldn't possibly, make that turn. There's just no way it could happen. But anyway, I've got a few major concerns with the size and scope of this proposal. The wall of townhouses is downright ugly. They should be broken up. There could be driveways in between them that would allow those people to actually have somewhere for those residents or visitors to park, because right now there is nowhere for any of their friends or family to park. If they're coming over, they're going to be parking right along Oxford, which is only parking on one side of the street. Let me remind you, there's only parking along the north side on Oxford. So, and right now there's already a lot of residents that park there as it is. So the townhouses should just go away, like Kurt said. I know it's part of their mixed use and qualifies them for their PUD, but 8 townhouses compared to the size of this project, just get rid of them. And if you still want to call it a PUD, fine, but the size of the project is way too big for this site, absolutely positively. It's going to cause problems. And I just want to know what assurances we can have as residents that this will not cause problems. And number 2, what our recourse is if there are problems caused by this. Because infrastructure, traffic, safety, there are tons of kids that go up and down Oxford on bikes, walking down the middle of the street, on skateboards, back and forth to the school and the park that are at the end of that street. And God forbid, I see an accident right in front of my house, and it's a kid getting hit by a car of somebody just deciding, oh, I need in a hurry to get back to my apartment. So the residents in the area all know that that's happening. They all know that there's a school at the end of the street. They all know that there's a park at the end of the street. They respect the speed limits for the most part. And God forbid, 200 more cars are going up and down Oxford and somebody gets hit. Because there's going to be no recourse for us to stop this once it happens. So, thank you.
Hi, Wendy Zabramski again. I also wanted to speak. Ms. Kurtz was just talking about the conditions of the PUD and after, what recourse do we have? He has repeatedly talked that Village Green Apartments would be the ones overseeing the apartment building, and he's offered no other. And I mentioned before at a meeting, and I wonder if anybody's had the time to look into some of the reviews on the other Village Green sites. They are good to poor reviews, other than your few, put in. There, a lot of people complain. A lot of people complain of the upkeep, and that's what we're going to end up dealing with as a city. If the upkeep isn't kept, it's going to fall on the city.
Rachel Pisantini on Oxford. So this gentleman up here asked, what is the recourse if something goes wrong with this PUD? Nobody answered. And from what I understand, The recourse is, if this doesn't go right and it hurts the residents' only recourse is to sue the city. Can somebody answer that, if that's correct? What is the recourse?
In the tragic scenario that the gentleman was talking about, where with children playing in the street and
No, if,
kids skateboarding in the street,
if
somebody
the
would hit,
developer does not follow the rules of what is set by the PUD, what is the recourse?
he's in breach of contract. We have every legal
Things
means
don't go
normally
well.
we have every normal legal means we have per contract law.
Okay, and after it's built and he goes away, because that's what he's going to do, take his millions and go, then what is the recourse when it affects the residents in a bad way?
The city is entering into a contract. He cannot go anywhere. We still have a contract with him as the developer of the PUD, so.
And after this building is built, what happens? I'm asking about the recourse when it hurts the residents.
He's in breach of contract. We can sue, we can bring him to court. We have a number of different options.
So when 200 cars are zooming down Oxford, I'm sure that's an exaggeration.
Yes.
But when,
We have to be a parade for that to happen.
but I don't think it's unrealistic to realize that that could happen,
We've
as
been
far
through-
as a lot of cars going that
Right.
direction down
And
Oxford.
trying to protect against that, that's why we had them commission a traffic impact study. We had our own engineers review that. They actually went through 3 reviews or something like that to make sure that they actually came to a supported conclusion on this. So these are the kind of things that we're doing proactively to make sure that these type of things don't happen. The traffic impact study, as well as the design elements, are how we protect ourselves from there being these, overly burdensome traffic situations. So.
Just for the record, all the people that ran for city council said they were not pleased with Harvard Commons at the League of Women Voters. That question was answered by every single one, and they weren't pleased.
Kurt, I just had a quick point to make. When they were talking about dog or pet waste and what to do with it, you kind of made a comment about what happens now. I don't understand why I have to clarify the fact that there's a big difference when you're fitting the number of residents in a small area, or a quarter of a block, versus what would take up 5 to 6 residential blocks in Berkeley, and what would happen with the pets. So we really shouldn't have to clarify that, but that's why you would ask what happens, because you're talking about infusing a lot of people into a small area, and that's going to have an impact. So that's why it is different than what it is now.
You're assuming that everybody in the building will have a pet and is out walking their pet, and that their pet is a dog.
No, I'm assuming the same ratio as scattered throughout the city would have a pet, possibly. And so therefore, you're having more people with pets in a small area versus spread out across 6 blocks of people that have yards. They're private yards. That doesn't necessarily always help, but the point is, some people let their dogs in their yard and they pick up after it.
Okay.
This would not happen.
Fair
That's not
enough.
an option.
I have to expand on that because I asked the question. When somebody has excessive dog waste or pet waste in their yard, or it provides harborage for vermin like rats by leaving dog waste, has garbage, paper bags, dug out holes under fences, the city code enforcer can go to that person and issue them a violation and command that they correct the situation or appear in court on a misdemeanor and tell it to the judge. When you have 100, 200 people and potentially up to, I don't know, if they're all pet friendly, you can have 140 little dogs in this place. Who are you going to issue that violation to when the poop piles up in the courtyard, which will happen?
Management company.
I'll point to you, Joe. Point next to you.
Right. And with our city's track record on code enforcement, frankly, I don't think that we have the manpower or the resources to be constantly called out to a large complex like this on crappy problems like that. I think it's a realistic thing. I think there should be some specific things in the site plan. You make it pet friendly, you have the facilities right there. That was my point.
Okay. All right. We'll look up what some of the neighboring communities are doing and some of their larger.
Mr. Chairman, a lot of,
Birmingham, I issue a ticket for excessive dog
a lot of apartment communities are pet-friendly, and a lot of them aren't. And it comes down to the management company to manage that. It only becomes a city problem when there's a problem, and that's when the city, the code enforcement comes in. But it's really a management issue, and, they don't want dog crap all over the
Would imagine
sidewalks
that.
either, because they lose rentals.
Or their corridors.
Yeah, or their corridors, thank you. But that becomes a management issue more than a site plan approval issue. And, but, there's very many apartment complexes that are pet-friendly. Some are, some aren't, and it comes down to the decision with the management, how they want to, whether they want to do it or how they want to deal with
I
it.
will personally research what some of our neighboring communities are doing on some of the larger properties with respect to pets. I mean, it used to be 25 years ago, you couldn't have a pet in an apartment complex. It was very unusual. So what, well,
This is a PUD, and
Okay.
you have every right to
Right.
require it. This is biohazard.
we understand.
And
We
you're
understand
saying
that.
it doesn't belong on the site plan. I'm saying it absolutely does. You
Well,
made an issue about the grease dumpster at the restaurant
That's
because
law.
you have requirements because it's a specific
That's state law.
material. Exactly. But feces is a biohazard material. It's a health hazard. And you can require that they have a specific container on the site plan for
We
it.
can.
And that's my point. And
We
why you
can.
wouldn't want to is beyond me.
But we don't but correct me if
This
I'm
is
wrong,
not
we don't
typical.
negotiate,
Nobody said we
we don't
don't.
negotiate the PUD. We can
And-
put forth some of the elements we want in there, but there's a team of people that issue it. We come
Yeah.
back, we review it. We will make sure all of those items are addressed in each item, that when they're addressed. But it's like, those are things that do need to be, I agree, they need to be in there. But exactly what they consist of, I can't answer that question right now.
I gotcha. I understand that, but Mr. Smith mentioned that it was not something that you typically require on a site plan. I would maintain that you should, and you can.
No, I'm
Well,
glad you
say
brought it
thanks
to
for
our
your
attention.
comment,
We
I
appreciate
mean,
that.
we're taking all
Because
these
we
comments
will-
down.
I know.
Just
I
like
just,
the snow
it's the
removal.
resistance that I have a problem with, and that's why I've popped up here 3 times. Because I don't understand why, when you have the power under a PUD to ask for virtually anything and everything that you think will work to make this development work for the city, and you're not asking for it,
Well, look.
it befuddles the mind.
With all due respect, we have your opinion. We need to hear from all sides on each one of these issues, and then make a decision, is this worth including or not? So it's a process. It's not like we're up here saying, this will go in, this will not go in. This is what we're here for.
I understand that, and when we're here for
To
citizen
work
comments.
these things out. I know that.
Feedback, and that's what you ask for, and that's what I'm giving, but to have it minimized, as Kurt pointed out, I think you need to take more seriously in your reaction to the way people say things. That's part of the problem with this process. These are very thoughtful people here who really would love for this to work, but you gotta pay attention to what they're saying, even the minutia. I'm sorry, it's disrespectful to do anything less, to ask for comments and then not take them 100% serious.
I do think we are taking these
I
comments
hope so.
serious.
I really do,
take
but I
note
want to
every
stress.
time during
Absolutely.
public comments, I take notes.
I'm glad.
Got notes right here.
And I come back
I'm
with
not,
some of those.
I'm not making specific accusations, but I'm saying we have felt dismissed in the past, and we don't want it to happen anymore. And because this is a PUD and they are asking for the moon in terms of zoning, and you need to ask for the moon right back in terms of specifics, and I mean right down to every last snowflake. Thanks.
And from a staff perspective, I'd certainly join you in finding out how this is handled in other complexes. So I thank you for your commitment, and I'll join you in it.
Yeah, no, we'll look at some of the urban ones.
Hi, guys. Brandon Alger. I live in Berkley in the Meadow Farm subdivision. I prepared a bunch of remarks about Section 138, 537. It's the city standards for approval of a PUD, but they've been covered really well, and I want to respect everyone's time and not go over those. But people like Mr. Riley, Mr. Wheeler, Ms. Curtis, and Mr. Hyde have made some very valid comments, and I hope their comments are addressed. I know in past meetings I've felt like that after citizen comments we spend a lot of time discussing material erosional capacity and the wavelength of photons and the finer points of urban flora, and I'm hoping that we can discuss things more related to Section 138, 537, and what needs to be done with these plans in order to be approved not only here, but when it goes before City Council. As I think we all want this to be developed, but if it's going to be developed as a PUD, it needs to meet those minimum standards. A comment that I wanted to make that I don't think's been made yet, the symmetry on the townhomes kind of stressed me out when I looked at the plans. Maybe that's just me, but just throwing that out there. Following up was something that Mr. Cox had brought up, and we did discuss, and I was happy to see there was some discussion on it, is stormwater management. I joined this program with the Great Lakes Commission, where they paired me with a mentor at the Friends of the Rouge, talking about some of the stormwater issues in the city of Berkeley. And I've been using that as a learning experience in order to hopefully educate city leadership on that. So far, I think it's been positive. One of the things that I have learned is that Oakland County, the standards for stormwater management, which, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone knows better, but I believe Berkeley uses Oakland County standards, and Oakland County has a fairly relaxed standard. So though it's great that this property will be brought up to Oakland County standards regarding stormwater management, that's not fantastic given the stormwater infrastructure issues that we have in the city. The city of Ann Arbor over the past 20 years or so has had some stormwater issues also regarding backup into basements. And they have worked as a city and also with Washtenaw County in order to make stricter standards for stormwater management. So new development on site has to be able to control more stormwater than development in Oakland County would. Being that this is a PUD and that we can ask for, maybe not the moon, but we can ask for things. Maybe we can't ask for the moon. Why not? Maybe it would be worthwhile to ask for a significant amount of stormwater management. I know in the past I've seen they want to do a green roof. The building covers maybe 1/8 of the property. That's not a significant amount given that we're talking about a 3-acre property. Let's say we get a 3-inch rainstorm. You know, it's almost an acre-foot of water that we're getting in an hour. There needs to be an ability to control that. And sure, we can control that 100%, but if we want to see a realized benefit for the community, go beyond that. Berkeley doesn't have standards that go beyond Oakland County standards, but we could do that for this property. I would really like to see that if possible. I'd like to see more discussion on aspects like stormwater and on the section I referenced earlier, and maybe less talk about EFS and less talk about the wavelength of photons. Thanks.
So now our comments have been minimized. Anybody else? Yep.
Jim Cannon, Harvard, Berkeley. Some of it may be redundant insofar as, like Mr. Height talked about, the townhomes. I agree. I think that's a little bit above and beyond the scope for this particular site. Granted, that would throw a wrench as far as the PUD definition, but I think it's a little too much, and that extra space, whether it be green or purpose for parking, safety, whatever, would be more beneficial in the long run. And even if it's the actual apartment building, the fact of 5-6 stories, obviously Berkeley doesn't have a lot. We're landlocked, so the only place we can do is go up, case in point, Oxford Towers. But I think even if we went a little bit higher, but had a smaller footprint, I think it would be more beneficial in that regards. As far as increased stress on the infrastructure, a lot of that's been covered as far as electric, sewage, traffic. That's still, there are a lot of unresolved issues which I think should be considered further. I guess as far as the water retention, you said that's by law as far as for the 100%. Is that available to the general public? I would presume so.
I would defer to our city engineer.
For, you know, like this site, you're talking about it covering the majority of the site. Is that information of, like, that's a particular system or similar systems available?
There's systems that are designed, and they vary from, it's not a cookie cutter.
No, I understand,
So
but
this will
just
be
a basic
designed-
system, you know, like
Well,
some
again,
engineering standards or
Oh,
conform
sure.
with, like,
Yeah, I think they're on the Oakland County website, aren't they, standards? Yeah.
you know, just to get a better understanding, because 100% retention, especially for something that size and consideration Berkeley. That is a tall order, and if I am going to ask a question, I would like to
Sure.
be a little bit better informed
If we
in
can
that regard.
also introduce the city's engineering consultant, that would be helpful. And this is who we've been meeting with as well, not just the Department of Public Works and the director who has kept a keen eye on all this, but this is a company, Little Rocky Park, that I think represents about 100 communities in the city of Michigan.
I'm familiar
Sorry,
with
the
company, sir.
Okay. They're very adept, and we're going to work together to design a system that will protect the public.
Okay, so that is proposed as far as the retention, so there's
Absolutely.
not a particular one you would have designated for this particular site plan, or we haven't gotten that far? Or?
As we complete, it had been, just so you know, so that you understand that this has been, in this case, a free-flowing project. And we had started off with buildings and other positions until we get to a point, or we are now getting to the point, and that's the purpose of our more recent meetings, to introduce our newest site plan. And with this plan in mind, how is it best for us to design it? We would suggest trying to use these materials, this type of a criteria.
Understand.
And between the DPW and your consultants, we believe we're on the right track. I'd rather have that come from the consultants.
Good evening, and yes. Basically, what they have to follow are, as you said earlier, the Oakland County standards for detention and/or retention. What Oakland County says, and actually what they make you design for, is a 100-year storm has to be detained on site. Now, and you're correct also on Oakland County's website. They do have all the calculations, the formulas. There's a series of tables. If it's an orifice outlet, if it's a pump outlet, in this case it would be an orifice, it wouldn't be pumped out. But they do have to provide calculations in the design to show that a 100-year storm event would be detained on site. Now, if there was not a way to get the water off the site, then Oakland County says you have to design for 2 100-year storms. That's retention. But in general, you're able to design for detention, detaining water on site. Another key element, a couple other key elements, is that with that design volume, basically, it can only be discharged at a rate of 0.2 CFS per acre, which is an agricultural runoff, basically. But beyond that point, the bottom line is that no new development is supposed to, the post-development volume and conditions cannot exceed the pre-development. So it's not just to say that the 0.2 CFS per acre, you're just going to go by that. So in other words, if you had less than that leaving the site now, you can't design for more, which would be 0.2. So you basically have to prove with calculations, demonstrate in the end that your post-development will not exceed the pre-development. So, and as the applicant said, that again, we have not seen any engineering drawings, so we don't know the size, the pipe size, the basin size, but there's obviously, as I said, Oakland County calculations that they have to follow, first of all. And there are different types of systems. You could do a manifold system of pipes of various diameters. You can put holding tanks. There's different ways to hold the water underground. Some communities, what they are starting to do that could help are employing the best management practices, BMPs, if you're all familiar with those. Again, they help a little bit, but what's really going to help here is an underground detention system. But some of those BMPs could be, bioswales, green roofs, grass ditches. I mean, there's ways to hold water and try to filter it before it gets to their holding tanks in this case. Again, those are just something else that some communities, some developments do, but the bottom line is what you're really going to get the bang for your buck is to actually put underground basins. With that said, too, we're also going to have to require that in order to put these structures underground, depending on the depth of these structures and size, you're going to need to have a geotechnical evaluation done on the soils to make sure that these soils will be able to handle whatever size structure they do install, whatever size pipe, and what the groundwater table is now. So there will have to be a separate study that the applicant will have to have done from a local, registered geotechnical consultant. And they will come up with recommendations based on what they see with the soil borings, and looking at the design, the proposed design, if they agree or disagree with the type of vault or whatever they're going to propose underneath would work in this situation. So there are a number of steps just for the stormwater detention alone that he will have to go through, and the basis is Oakland County standards, of course. So.
You just killed my 3 minutes.
Oh, well, we'll give you a couple minutes back. Just while we're at it, a couple other things. Obviously, we did not do a review of this because we have not had engineering drawings. And I know Mr. Schuler did come up with a brief memo. I'm sure you all have it. And again, we went through the items with Mr. Schuler. And again, there's just other details we're obviously going to need. These are schematic drawings, but of course we're going to need to see the existing topography, the proposed topography with grades, contours. Bottom line is that all the drainage on the site will not be allowed to leave the site, meaning runoff, sheet off in any way. So it's all going to have to be detained on site and detained in their underground system. Water main was touched on earlier. Of course, there's going to have to be a looped water main system here. You do not put in 6-inch anymore. 10 state standards will basically tell you need to put an 8-inch water main. And the loop basically provides water reliability. So that is a requirement. Hydrants, we will have to look at the plan to make sure there is proper coverage for the hydrants. Fire suppression lines, again, the fire marshal will also have to review this plan as well. Few other things touched on earlier about, and also with the water main, that's going to have to be a public water main with a dedicated easement. The city will actually maintain the water main. However, the storm sewer now, whatever system is constructed, that is the responsibility of the developer, and it will not be the city's responsibility. However, as we kind of said earlier, with the contract, there's going to have to be a perpetual maintenance agreement put in place that basically has the developer on the hook to properly maintain, if there's going to be overflow structures, cleanouts, whatever the case may be, that's going to be on them to make sure the system is maintained on site. Turning templates, I know were brought up a little bit earlier with the fire apparatus, and that's going to have to be shown on the plans. And again, the fire marshal will need to bless that as well. Traffic study, we touched on that earlier. That was not our firm who did the original study. However, my traffic department did do the review and concurred with the results and findings and recommendations of the prepared report. A couple other things that we would, again, parking calculations, we would do that review as well based on the square footage of the building and living space. Permits, of course, you would have to have a number of permits, the water main, sanitary tap permit, soil erosion, so all those permits, again, would have to be done by the applicant, and we would, again, review those to make sure everything's taken care of on those. ADA ramps, if there's anything with ADA ramps as far as within the site, or of course on the perimeter of the site, would have to follow current ADA standards for the landings and the ramps. So again, we would be looking for detailed grades on that. Same thing with driveways, we would look at the slopes to make sure they do not exceed MDOT standards. And then not to say a lesser degree, but pavement sections, sidewalk sections, granted if this would be not a city-owned road, but we would still make recommendations for the type of cross-sections that they do come up with.
Do you have any statement about how much is impervious right now versus what is impervious in the future? Just by recognizing how much parking lot there is in
again, I'd have to really look in and see what the existing comparative to now to come up with. And I have not done any reviews on this because we have not been asked to do a full review, so I will defer to comment until later.
Basically, it's an impervious site right now.
No, we understand.
Right. Yeah.
we understand.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'd like to ask.
Your discharge number, 0.2
0.2 CFS per acre.
cubic feet per second per acre?
Yes. And that's an agricultural runoff that
It's
was
nothing.
developed years ago.
That's this much water per acre on the site, 0.6, that's a bucket of
Cubic feet
water.
per second per acre, right.
0.6 if 3 acres, I'm
Yeah,
rounding.
yeah.
But
And
that's a bucket of water a second, that's nothing. So, as
that's
we
the
said
standard.
earlier.
Actually, Wayne County actually says 0.15, so they're actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know what the numbers were. And so that will actually help the surrounding.
Correct.
As some of us had mentioned earlier. So I didn't realize it was that small of a number.
And again, you have to ultimately look at also the post-development versus pre-development. So that number is important, but it's
Has to be less.
There's other factors.
So if
you
this
have
was
to
an empty field that they were building on,
Right.
then
Be different.
it would be, they would have to have less than that because they're probably,
right.
probably at that now.
Just trying to visualize that. That's a metal
It's very
bucket of water
small.
a
So
second.
when I cut you off, a couple months ago on the stormwater, it's because Oakland County standards, while they may not meet Washtenaw County standards, but they still are very robust for stormwater standards, and I don't think they should be discounted. They are certainly better. The site will be better from a stormwater perspective, and I think that, the concern of the public with respect to straight stormwater should be alleviated because of what will be required for them purely by our zoning ordinance, which models the county.
Correct.
And but now, there are other issues, because snow is an issue, you're correct, that is an issue, what's going to happen to it, and all the other issues that come up. But every issue is, as we've said, important, so, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a
Couple Ross and
question. I have a
Clark,
question.
appreciate it.
Question, too.
Oh, we have questions from the
We
audience?
have Mr. Cannon as well. Do we want Mr.
Okay.
Cannon? Can we have the resident continue his, Mr.
Sure,
Cannon?
oh, Mr. Cannon, I'm sorry, did you, no? Okay.
Do you know what the Washtenaw County standards are?
I do not offhand.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, two things. Just for the sake of one of them is for you. For the sake of the discussion here, City Manager Baumgarten shared with the committee I'm on, the Environmental Committee, that the City of Berkeley is actively considering more stringent stormwater standards than the county standards. Not a done deal, just under consideration, but in light of the problems we've had around here, that is under consideration by the city at this time. I think that's fair, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, but my question for you is, how would the new detention system of this anticipated size interact with the existing storm sewer network? Specifically, if there were sewer backups downstream, would having this additional detention in the neighborhood help protect the community from flood risks?
Well, you're actually, again, we're not doing the design, we'd have to look at it, but again, you're actually putting less water in the sewer than what's going in now, because a lot of that's going pretty much directly in, where if you now have a holding tank or two, you're actually holding that water back, and it's not reaching the sewer as quickly as it does now, hence not overburdening the sewer. Now, if you've got a blockage in the line, well, obviously, eventually something could happen, but that's with any sewer system. If you have a blockage, anything can happen.
Sure.
So, but in general, yes, that's the point of the basins, is to hold the water back.
I might add to that, we're also probably the first line of defense to the neighborhood to the west. And the reason being because the water is discharging to the east. Should it get filled further east, the first place it's going to start to come back is into our property, which has retaining and detention.
Which is no guarantee, I get that,
No,
but it'll be more than what we have. Yeah.
We're increasing the capacity, right.
Yes. Okay. Do you have a question for, a comment for us or for the engineer?
Question for the engineer.
Okay.
We probably have a very knowledgeable person in the room. The one thing that was mentioned was that there would be separated stormwater versus sewage for the development. But if the city itself doesn't have a separation, does that have any help to the current condition in the neighborhood?
Well, sure, because if you're separating on this site, the stormwater and sanitary, and as he said, they want to hold the stormwater back, only the sanitary is getting into the combined system, pretty quickly, basically. But that's that's a small amount of water that's getting into, obviously the stormwater is the basis, that's what fills the combined sewers. The sanitary water is really not that much, it's less than 1% typically that's actually going to your sewer. So by holding this water on the site and detaining it, you're actually, again, kind of go back to that question, you're actually holding the water from getting into the combined system out in the street. And so you are actually helping the situation, if that answers your question.
Yeah. I think where I'm still a little confused is that, basically this is 142 households. So I can't imagine that it's a small amount of sewage that's getting fed into our existing grid.
And that's their job to also do the calcs on how much sewage is actually, they'll have to show the sewers and profile the sizes and determine by the amount of people, 3 people per, however, they'll come up with a standard and tell us
If I
what the
might
sewage
say,
is.
not to minimize your concern, but this, as a school, when it was in peak, there were 1,000 kids in there, and not that they were all.
They're not doing laundry or dishes or.
Yeah.
No.
Come on. It's not a comparable. You're not making a valid comparison.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
There's a question in the back.
I have an engineering-related question. You mentioned it would handle the 100-year storm event capacity-wise. What's the duration of that? Is the 1 hour 100-year event, 24-hour 100-year event?
Well, we'd have to look at a chart, but I believe that might be like a 3-inch per hour rainstorm, approximately. Again, we'd have to look at the charts to ensure.
3 inches.
Depends on what atlas you're looking at and what
Yeah,
technique.
measured 2 ways.
Right, there's
But when the capacity they would have to hold, is that for a 1 hour event or is that for a 24-hour event? What is the capacity limited to?
Well, it's a 100-year event, so basically,
But
a 100-year event can
is
be
like
a 1
7
hour.
different 100-year events.
Yeah, well, again, a 100-year event is your standard for Oakland County, so that could, it depends on the intensity of the storm, right? I mean,
Yeah, I guess I'm not being clear on the question. So when you say a 100-year event, there's many ways to interpret that. You could have a 100-year 1 hour event, which does not meet the 24-hour 100-year event. You might have a 10-year 24-hour event at the same time you have a 100-year 1 hour event.
Right.
So when you're saying it's the 100-year event, is that a 100-year 1 hour event or a 100-year 24-hour event?
No, it would be a 1 hour event, and Oakland County states, again, everything's in the Oakland County
Right.
special section there on how to.
And I did find it on I just did a Google and found it. It's available on
WRC
it's well, no, that you can find the documentation on
To answer your question.
on the Oakland County website. Okay.
I'll look at that. And the one other question I had is, and this is an engineer-related question. I don't know the answer to, but can you engineer an on-site detention system to accept off-site runoff? So the runoff from Coolidge, Oxford, and Harvard Street, can that be engineered to fill into their detention systems to potentially add a community benefit as not only are we managing our stormwater, but we're managing another acre foot around us?
Well, and that's based on topography, first of all, just to even see what actually would go to that site now,
Sure, and it
if
would
it's
be
even
from
possible.
west here.
You're not gonna buck grade and, change streets around for that, but I mean, obviously it technically can be done if the topography worked. But again, obviously this is very preliminary, so I have not seen any detail.
But the capability exists, it would just be dependent on topography.
But then, of course, the more you're adding, the larger system you would have to, so there would, depending on then the footprint of the buildings and everything else, there'd have to be a lot of modifications to the plans, but.
Yeah, certainly, that's just kind of my suggestion as a potential community benefit, is that it could manage a limited amount of offsite stormwater capacity as well. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any more comments from the public? There was okay. Thought there was an arm up earlier.
Lisa Kempner, I live in Berkeley. I just have a quick question. when I look at the sidewalk, my daughter and I walk down Coolidge all the time. So I'm thinking about how we would travel this. So I see that we would walk along, and then I don't see a sidewalk, I see an island. So that means we're either going into Coolidge or we're going around into where the cars drive. And then we're getting back on the sidewalk. And is there a ramp down to that second island, or do I have to swoop in at the door and then go around?
Here's the sidewalk here. Crossing the street, continuing, you do curve in here.
So there's no ramp down. I have to go all the way back, all the way by the door in order to walk down Coolidge.
Actually, if you go to the landscape plan, it shows it, that there's a sidewalk along Coolidge still.
There's a sidewalk, and then at the bottom part here, lower, 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 lower. Yep, right there. So I'm walking into the street or walking into the driveway to get around, or is there just not a sidewalk listed there?
Yeah.
We make
There's a sidewalk there.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank
Run
you.
a sidewalk across it.
Yeah, it's showing a sidewalk on both islands, I think.
No, not the little one yet.
No, not the little one, yeah, the pork chop yet.
Kind of like the way the boulevards are down over here. Sometimes there's a sidewalk, sometimes there's not.
Yeah, I don't like that. Sure, sidewalks.
Well, we do that.
Barb Morris, I live on Wiltshire in Berkeley. And most people have already discussed most of my concerns, so I won't repeat them. But I do have the same concerns. One thing, though, about the snow, I don't know, again, you don't know what the plan is on snow removal exactly, but I know in all the parking lots I see and at Harvard Commons, they do push snow up, and they eliminate a good portion of the parking because snow is going to build up. It just does. So I think they're a little short on parking as it is, and my concern is that it's going to decrease more parking. I just want you to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Two more.
Hi, Karen Korber. I actually live 2652 Oxford, directly across from the townhouses. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for hand delivering notices to the residents so that we knew what was going on and we could participate. I think you've heard all of the concerns that the residents have. We're all saying the same things. I think to be thoughtful of our quality of life, what we're going to have to deal with moving forward should be, and I think is going to be uppermost in your minds. And I do appreciate all of the residents. Don't think because we that are most impacted right there are not here at every single meeting that we're not interested. We are. We're definitely interested. It's just we all work, we have lives. I also own a large business on Coolidge, so I'm definitely interested in this. But we are here as one voice, and again, be thoughtful and respectful to us as your fellow neighbors. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Annalise Petrus. I live on Franklin in Berkeley. I am disappointed to see that the building is taller than the last time we saw it. I think it is now, it has a penthouse level. It's now up in the range of 65 feet, which is twice the height of the school that's there. It is also closer to the street. I think that does not meet the surrounding neighborhoods. It does not meet our master plan. The master plan specifically calls out the new multiple family residential development should possess innovative design elements that are consistent with the suburban character of the city, such as loft apartments or stacked condominiums. The design of the multiple family buildings should complement the adjacent single-family residential neighborhoods. A six-story building does not complement the adjacent neighborhoods of 1 to 2 stories. The thing with the master plan was that an amendment was passed less than a year ago, where it was adopted for future residential use that MISHDA advised that Michigan communities need to have denser housing, about 6 to 10 units per acre. For comparison, Berkeley is at 3.63 units per acre. This development of 142 units is 43 units per acre. That is over 100 times larger than what MISHDA is asking, than what the amendment to the master plan was adopted. I think just simply taking one story off, making it a 4-story building would be much better. That would be 112 units of 34 units per acre. That then is 100 times what our master plan was adopted. I think that many people don't comment about the height because it's very hard to understand from the drawings how tall this really is. When you have a bird's eye view, you don't see 1 story versus 6 stories. I think that we should implore that a street elevation be included in the next PUD application. That people are not able to see it at the way the drawings are presented. That they need to show the neighboring heights. And then adding 3 driveways to the frontage, I think is going to be a detriment to our walkable city and also to very dangerous to our pedestrians. And back to our master plan, what it says is that every effort should be made to limit the number of driveways and encourage access off side streets, service drives, frontage roads, and shared driveways. That these developments which generate enough traffic or have sufficient frontage to consider allowing more than 1 driveway should locate these second access points on a side street or a shared street with adjacent uses where practical. So part of adding these 3 driveways, I think what is very apparent is that in order to do that, 6 street trees were removed. So not only are we knocking down a historical existing building, we're also going to knock down all of the street trees. If we can't come up with a creative solution to provide apartments or additional housing within our existing context, it's just a lack of creativity. And the scale of this project, they would rather invest in tons of underground retention than preserve the street trees. I mean, the cost of doing that retention is so expensive. They will pass that along to the tenants, and the rental rates will be so high that it won't even attract the desirable, multi-dimensional residents that you want. So I think that, the circular drive has a lot of problems to it. That you're going to have moving trucks, delivery trucks, going through there. When you have apartments of studios and 1 bedrooms
is a high turnover rate of move-ins and move-outs. That those trucks are going to be parked there unloading and reloading because the elevator is in the front. I highly doubt people will be carrying their beds through the middle of the courtyard, through a parking structure. They will be parking in the front. Because the building projects in the front, the cars will have to pull up all the way to the front curb, blocking pedestrians' paths. This is urban planning 101, not to introduce driveways. That is why it's in our master plan. I think the thing is that we don't have a city planner at the moment. I think it's worth, the city's investment to have a consultant to review this PUD for our citizens. Just our visual review of it is not enough. We all aren't trained in all the aspects of this. If we had a city planner, they would be doing that. They would be reporting on it. I think while it's vacant, we should consult.
If I might just clarify, this is not a 6-story building. It's 4 stories of residential, 1 story of parking. There will be there will be no deliveries in the front. There will be no backup of trucks. We will have hand carts and so on to allow for deliveries to be made through the podium underneath through the elevators. So it will not encumber traffic.
So even the mechanical story at the top is...
That's set back.
The front of the building is not set back.
Sure it is.
In the center?
The center it is?
The center is projecting up. The stairwells are set back, but that center core is projecting up.
I can't go any further. The center is seats. The center is the penthouse.
Would you go to an elevation?
Excuse me. You had a slide in your presentation that is probably the best slide you could use. It was
Right there. Stop right there.
1604 was a slide you had. It was almost like a shot from, if you took it from the Oxford Park Towers, a little bit north of that. No. It was a bigger slide. It was, pick 16054.
Yeah, it was with the whole.
And it was kind of like a neighborhood shot from above. I think it's 2 or 3 after this.
There you go.
Right there. See, this one lets you see the magnitude or lack thereof of your utility penthouse.
Right.
It gives you some scaling for the neighborhood, and this is a slide that people should be focusing on.
I think that's a benefit for the neighborhood, quite frankly. If I can explain that. We have
Did Harvard Commons come out looking
You know
like
something,
this?
it's amazing, if I may, it's amazing to me how little credibility you give this design team. So let me explain that.
Joe.
We have been laboring over how to heat and cool this building for over a year now. We have a couple of options. The options are, you know what wall shakers are? Every unit has a side wall, where you put a unit on the side wall, you bring fresh air in, you heat it and you cool it, and you shake the window. It sounds like a hotel. Or you put a really great system in, and if you don't have those wall shakers, and you have boilers on every floor, and you have a cooling tower in the top. At the very top of this building, right there, part of that roof will be gone. Part of that roof will actually be a hole with a cooling tower, expelling water up to the air so it can cool. So we have heat and cool through pipes and heat pumps. It's an incredibly efficient and great system, and there's no noise perpetrated through the neighborhood. There's no waste. It's an incredibly it's ugly. It's terrible.
You're a salesman, but we need to see the benefit to the city. We're not seeing it.
Yeah, it's okay, Joe. It's okay.
So are air conditioners on the top of that building as well?
No.
Okay.
It's a heat pump
It's
system.
a heat pump system.
So no coils, no noise like your neighbors. It's quiet.
A chiller tower.
It's enclosed.
A heat pump. basically.
Yes,
Or-
essentially,
yeah.
everybody has a heat pump in their own unit.
Right.
Right.
So, Joe,
But
basically,
it's-
I'm sorry, you're saying basically then you have no mechanicals on the roof?
That's correct.
It's inside that.
No.
Inside that
In the
penthouse.
room. So you're not going to see units or hear them. And every time they kick on, like a cheaper building or like the building next door to you right there.
Right.
Those bumps on the ceiling or bumps on the roof. You're not going to hear it.
It's still very tall. It's still very tall.
It is tall.
If you go to an elevation, you'll see.
You won't see it unless you're above it.
But the center piece is taller. That penthouse is not set back 10
Chairman.
feet like the stairwells
Chairman.
are.
Okay, all right, right, okay, all right. So we agree that the centerpiece is taller. I think their point is that the entire center section is set back, so I think you both have a point. But, okay, would you like to continue?
Yes. In regards to the traffic study, the one that I reviewed online is the one of the previous PUD, where the building was in the back. The quantities of units were different. While it may evaluate current traffic conditions, any future that it is evaluating is not relevant. It is a totally different building that they used to evaluate it. In addition to that,
I think
Number
it's
of
the number of
units have actually
units is
dropped.
dropped.
That's what they
It's-
base the
It's not
traffic
based on the
volume on.
building, it's based on the number of residents.
Right.
And the number of units with the potential number of cars allotted per, whether it's a
but the
one-bedroom, two-bedroom.
configuration is different. So
Th-
how people
that's-
are getting in and out of the parking lot
That
is
hasn't
different.
changed.
That hasn't
No, that hasn't changed.
It used to be a U-shaped building behind
Right,
it.
but
Right.
the
Right.
entry points are the
So-
same
Entry
place.
points are the same.
They're in about
Onto the
same-
roads.
They're in about the same place.
Right.
Okay, if you feel that that is fair. I do not. However, what is in the traffic study is that they do make a recommendation to provide an easement for all northbound traffic to go out past the church. And that is not in
It's there.
the site plan.
That's there.
How are you going to maneuver a fire truck, a moving truck, through 4 or 5 turns to get out the south? If you go to a site plan.
I don't have a clicker.
I don't.
I think can we go to a site plan?
Bennett, you got the clicker, you've been clicking.
So the public safety did a memo, and Mrs. Zembrensky actually read, I think, salient points in the memo where the turning radius is tight for a projected type of truck. It's adequate for a current type of truck. There are modeling programs for that.
So the traffic study recommended that this be the out for all northbound traffic. In order to get out here, you've got to come down, over, around, and over, because these are the one-ways in the wrong direction. There is no way a fire truck is going to be able to do that, that a moving truck is going to be able to do that. It does not, just because a traffic study is called for, it's not a checkbox. We also need to take into advisement what they say. I mean, you can read the traffic study for yourself. This is the part where, when we had a city planner, they help us evaluate these things. So it would seem like because that vacancy is there, the budget is still there for their salary. So let's get a planner. This is 142 new houses. That's a lot. This is when something goes wrong. That's why when people talk about snow and dog stuff and garbage, it's because it's 142 households going wrong. It's not 1 or 2. It's not 5 or 20. That's a big deal. So, the other aspect to this, when I read the drawings, it says that 268 parking spaces are going to be provided. I only count 199.
There's another lot across the street, there's actually 440
But for the residents, it says 268 spaces are being provided. So it doesn't add up.
We've done it a lot of times. I'll be glad to go over it.
There are 82 inside and 101 outside and 16 for the townhouses. You're missing like 70 parking spaces.
There's a shared parking lot here that we have an agreement with the church.
That's part of the parking arrangement.
It is, and that is intentfully part of the
That's
master plan.
85 more spaces, I believe.
Yeah.
So 70 of the residences are going to walk all the way, 70 of them are going to walk all the way over to their apartment.
Perhaps.
I mean, 10, 20, maybe this could be manageable, but 70, no way. I mean, this is undersized.
Does somebody have a phone going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there somebody, is that? Can we not hear it?
We have studied the parking to a great extreme. We've addressed it every way.
So where is it on the drawing that the shared parking and
Well,
how
we-
many
we-
are shared?
We've got, we have resolved that issue as far as the parking goes. That's been gone over. Now, your point about that the residents aren't going to like parking that far, it's a valid point. I wouldn't like parking that far from my residence either. But that's gonna be part and, they're not gonna, they don't have anywhere else to go that's closer. They're not gonna be able to park on one side of Oxford. They're going to be fined as a resident if they parked on the street. And there's no parking on Coolidge for them. So this is when you're looking for a new apartment home and they say, I might have to park in the hinterland, that's part of their deal. And
then
if they
what
want to pay
happens
more, they
on-
park closer, I guess. I don't know.
What happens on Church Sunday? I mean,
That's been studied as well. I mean, we have gone through that, and actually, I mean, we probably spent at least 3 or 4 sessions just talking about parking back and forth, so I apologize if you've missed those, but I think you could catch those on some of the earlier planning commission, but I think that was resolved to our, to the technical satisfaction. Now, whether people like it or not, that's a different issue, but technically, they have the parking spaces that they need for this development.
so as part of a PUD, that should be in writing on that chart, the shared amount, and it is not there.
Well,
This
that's
isn't
not
the
the PUD.
This isn't
What
the
you're
PUD.
looking at. This is a site plan review in advance. A PUD is a contract, and there will probably be some drawings, I assume, attached to it, but there will be all of those agreements with the diocese.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There will be the agreements with the diocese. All of those agreements will be part of the PUD, and that runs with the parcel. It doesn't run with the developer. So whoever buys that, if they go bankrupt and the next person buys it, that PUD lives with the land just like a restrictive covenant. And I'm not an attorney, so I can't answer to exactly the machinations of that, but
perpetual.
it is perpetual. So,
Cover that.
so that has been
So
dealt
same
with,
with
and that
the,
parking agreement lives in perpetuity.
Okay.
Same with the POD.
Yes.
So I printed out some pictures of other projects that are 5 stories. It's rather difficult to find a 5-story building in our area, actually. I think I've found one in Royal Oak that's 5 stories with a 4-story next to it. When they have a 5th story, they do set that back, not like the center that's still part of the mass. Birmingham does have a 4-story building that is up against the street, but still, this will be a story taller than that. I don't think it's unreasonable to request them to take a story off this building and make it 4 stories. The thing about
I think
fire code and designing with sprinklers is that that's all well and good when you have a fire inside your building. But when you have a fire outside your building, everything is lost because it can rage on the outside. There are no detection systems for it. There's balconies all over this. There's barbecues and a fire pit. Those are all gas. This is a dangerous building at that height.
Okay.
So because of the height, the drives, the traffic, the danger to pedestrians, I don't feel this project suits Berkley.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any more comments from the audience? Okay. So, because we're in this weird little space, I think we need to go around the room, but before I want to do that, I want to talk about item number 3 on the agenda, because I don't think we can move forward with that tonight, because we didn't have the hearing, correct?
Well, agenda item number 3 is just, provides the agenda space for the planning commission to discuss this item.
Okay,
It
which is-
doesn't
okay.
have to yield a vote in any way.
Okay, all right,
It should-
very
like,
good.
You're correct to say it should not.
Okay, very good. So I think we should take new concerns or new comments from the commission and/or things that you've mentioned before that don't seem to have shown up in the changes. Or, Mark, you have a comment?
I was wondering if you wanted to start that end instead of...
Okay, no, I wasn't looking to start on this end. I was just kind of spreading my cheer on both sides of the table. So I am happy to start, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, with which Mr. Smith would like to start, because you guys always like to start.
Well, I always have a very long list, so if someone wants to start over there, it'll whittle down my list.
Okay.
Today.
Of random thoughts.
Or is there somebody who'd like to start? Would you like to put your hand up? And I would like to mention that we agree that we do miss Amy and having a planner. We think Matt is doing a great job juggling 2 jobs, but it can't be dismissed that we actually have a couple of full-time planners on the commission that are planners for a living and do provide valuable insight into the activities. We have a couple of engineers, we have a lawyer, and people, and architects. So we do have some depth up here on the bench, if you will. And that's why we all come together and hopefully build a better beast. But who would like to start? I'll pick somebody.
Madam Chair?
All right, Mr. Smith.
I'll volunteer.
Thank you.
My notes are kind of scattered, so I apologize. And I also apologize for missing the October meeting. So some of the things I have to say may be old.
Okay.
Just a couple quick comments. We talked quite a bit about stormwater retention and detention. And one of the things that popped into my head is, since, assuming this project may move forward, there could be an opportunity for the city to work with the developer and maybe even share costs to develop a bigger retention basin. I think it's just fundamentally wrong to try to put a cost on a developer for something that really isn't anything that's theirs. But if there's an opportunity to combine and share, maybe we can make even a bigger stormwater retention detention system. There was a little bit of discussion from Fire Marshal Pete Kelly about the turning radius for the proposed new truck. So you may wind up having to lose a couple of parking spots and move the greenbelt behind the proposed townhouses out a little bit to give them some space, or there's other ways to be creative, but I don't see anything like that as a horrible thing. About the townhouses, one, from my view, and if we went back to that picture 16054, you could see that the townhouses are, the proposed townhouses, a nice transition between the apartment building and the neighbors. So that picture there it kind of tells a story that is a pretty solid story. But overall, the discussion here, in the last 18 months, we've gone from a threat of being overtaken by low-income, high-rise housing to now we're worried about the rents may be too high. So it's an interesting discussion, the evolution. The rear courtyards that they proposed, the barbecue pits and whatnot, I would take exception to those. Having over the years, lived underneath communal barbecues. It doesn't go well with open windows, so that there might be a better way to have the community space there. This proposed development is entirely consistent with the city master plan that I helped draft. There's not one thing that they're doing here that is inconsistent, and so the quotes, the little pieces we're pulling out of the plan to say how it's not consistent, isn't pulling in the big picture. So I just, that's a reaction I've got there. The townhouse proposal, the way they look, I don't like them, but they're very consistent with the new construction in Berkeley. So we talk about setting a trend or being contextual. This is similar to what we're seeing, so I can't jump on that. The porches on the south facing of the condos, that is a cool idea. We don't need them, I just...
Condos.
I'm sorry, the condos, yes, the porches.
Townhouses.
Townhouses, yes. That, especially with the walls on the east and west side, we talk about, protecting from the neighbors. Well, now a neighbor wouldn't be able to see, who's sitting on a porch. So you've got some privacy there. There's some real thoughtfulness by the developer that, we're not really including in the discussion. Other things, the apartment buildings. I don't know when this happened, but now there are no balconies along the west end of the building. So they've moved balconies to the north, south, and east sides. So again, we're talking about
There's still balconies.
not on the west sides.
Not on the west side.
There are no balconies on the west side of the buildings.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
So you've got some things here that huge in terms of, the man from Ground Zero. If he would show as much respect to his neighbors as these people are, doing with their proposal, you'd see a much better neighborhood. But this is a cool thing. Now, also, when you look at the building from the front, discussions in September were to break up the facade. And by doing this H-shaped building and the constructive use of the different facing materials, you've got something that looks like 5 different buildings. You've got roof lines, and that picture doesn't do justice, the setbacks that are proposed here. Yeah, except that one picture, see that one, when you look at it, walking by, you have a couple buildings that are tight to the street, and then you have 3 buildings, or what looks like 3 buildings that are set back. This is, I think, everything that was asked for. As for the total height, we talked a little bit about the utility penthouses, but that people don't live up there, and you can't see those from the street. You can probably only see them if you're in the Oxford Park Towers. So without going too much, what I've seen tonight, I really like. There's some minor things I would change, but right now these, from where it was in September to where it is today, is quite an improvement. That's all for jumping around. I also did a calculation about toilet flushes and rainwater, but you don't want to see that.
Well, I assume this will be all low flow fixtures in comparison to, I think, when I bought my house, it still had, 1960s fixtures with 7-gallon flushes or whatever they were. Okay. Do I want to go over to Mark, or do I want to go over to Joe? Joe, are you ready, or do you want some more time?
I can go.
Okay.
Okay. I guess I've got 2 lists. One is sort of top level items, and the other is more like little minutia type items or detail items. I guess I'll probably try to spend more time on the top level items, although I don't want to ignore the small items because I don't want them to come up as surprises later.
Okay.
So, okay, we heard a lot of comments tonight. I thought that the comments about snow and pet waste were certainly relevant and trenchant, and I think that they are things that we could ask for the applicant to address the next time we see them. You know, snow in particular is something that a lot of sites don't really think about, and in a community like this, it's more important than it is in, you know, a big box community where there's just so much acreage that you can just find a place to put it, you know, and there's probably 600 extra parking spaces anyway. You know, we don't really have that situation here, so I do think it's something that we should be concerned with. The direction of the one-way aisles in the shared parking lot came up. I've been saying that on and off throughout this process, that the aisle that aligns with the driveway out really ought to be pointing toward the driveway out. Not really sure why that.
It's one drive.
Well, yeah, I know. It goes in. It goes in as well, but we're trying to avoid the left in. But anyway, it's something that should be probably looked at. I mean, if there's an area for snow on this site, it's probably the land bank.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Really. Yeah, you've got that edge there as well, but that's only going to hold so much, whereas the land bank has a lot of capacity. So, something to think about. I noticed that the photometric plan didn't include the community garden and park, and I wanted to ask why.
Because you got an old edition. Oh, it didn't include the, hang on a second.
Yeah, the park is dark on the photometric plan, so.
We have, they don't register. They're 3-foot-high bollards.
Oh, okay, okay.
I think we gave you a cut sheet on them.
There's a cut sheet on them, yeah.
Commercial grade bollards.
Mhm.
They're energy efficient. It's not low voltage. It's permanent fixturing. It's durable enough to be put in public parks, along dockways, waterways. They're made specifically for this, but we didn't want to put them up high.
Mhm.
Safe, wayfinding light without being too bright.
And refracting down. But
They have.
these are heavy-duty bollards.
Okay.
They can take a punch and take a hit. And they're along the pathways, I think 12 feet on center, on alternating sides.
Yeah.
And they don't show up on a photometric. But the blue areas are zero foot candles, and the brown color is registering some.
Right.
So there's absolutely zero spillover. We're trying to not to overlight this, and as you say, you can see the color of the lights in the cut sheets that we gave you that address your specifics.
Mhm. Okay. All right, I was just curious as to why that wasn't showing up there, but that makes sense. The townhomes, I know a lot of the comments we received tonight were kind of opposed to the townhomes. I do think that they affect something of a transition. They kind of have linebacker shoulders. When you're looking at them from the front, that one long roof ridge in the middle kind of makes them look bigger than they are, I think. I don't know if there's a way to play with that.
We went back and forth about hip roofs and gable. Yeah.
Mhm.
We're not closed-minded to it.
Sure. Okay.
Seriously, we have the drawing right now.
Right.
I like the hips a lot better.
Yeah, hipping at the end would certainly help.
It did, but then it was the preview of this body last time that ultimately asked us to do something more similar to this. We went through an exhaustive study in the office trying to take a 4-story brownstone image and make it into 2 stories. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Trying to do a Roman revival doesn't work in this format. It's not Berkeley. This is, you could go from any street in Berkeley, take seven shots of houses that are on the market or sold in 30 days. That's that. We're trying to hit a market that we're asked to hit, and in the image and the texture that is being built right now, and I believe we hit that. I would highly recommend that we take another look at the hip on the end.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, really. I mean, as far as the actual look of it, yeah, it's a
makes it softer
major
edge,
improvement.
And I think a nicer image.
Right. I'm just thinking in terms of the overall mass.
We're close minded to that. We put up.
I just don't like that ridge.
Actually, we had 2 drawings we were going to show you and say.
Disappears on the right.
On the bottom. Decided, you know something, you guys you got enough to decide and help us with, and we will take that more than we should.
Sure. But as I said, I'm okay with them as a transition. And let's see if I'm just trying to think of other top level items that I've got. Because I've got a fairly decent little bullet list of smaller items. As far as pedestrian connectivity, I think that the sidewalk and the pork chop is definitely necessary. You need a way across that driveway. So as far as the other little half-moon driveway for drop-offs in the front, I know there's been a lot of discussion, over the course of this project about, is that necessary? And it's persisted in every plan, so I gather that the developer feels it's necessary. I mean, we're seeing a sidewalk in the island there now, where there wasn't one before. Looking at it, I'm not sure how much that sidewalk gets used versus the one that curves in along the driveway. I don't know if there's any way of, if there are any models that would suggest likely pedestrian paths through that area, but it just, I don't know. I'm not sure that the way it's designed, that more pavement there is necessarily the best thing. If it would just work better as a landscaping island, and then the foot traffic is routed along the sidewalk.
Patterns,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we tried to address. One is going to be people are coming right down through.
Going right through.
And the others who are walking up the drive from being dropped off or again being picked up, and somebody's just a vehicle's waiting there for them.
The width of that driveway, is that, are you basically, I think you're probably trying to accomplish 2 things. One is you're probably trying to please some sort of public safety standard, and the other would be that you're trying to give room for somebody to go around someone who's sitting in front of them. Right, okay. So, I mean, narrowing it to slow cars down.
It's primarily convenience, but certainly public safety has to be heard.
Sure. I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to it being there. It's just, I know it has been discussed a lot.
We could always reduce the sidewalk in width, both of them actually. We don't have passing traffic, pedestrian traffic, so we can make them 4 foot each. But
Well, no, I wouldn't do that.
Actually, it's public sidewalk.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
That's right.
I wouldn't want to do that. I'm just going to throw in all my small items here because I want to get them in there. I do think it's a valid point that the shared spaces should be denoted on the plan as well as in the PUD agreement. It just helps get your head around exactly what's happening where. So when you're breaking out the parking and the table, noting how many of them are shared is just a good idea, I think.
that's no problem.
Let's see. I've got notes on every page. This is a tiny item. I almost feel ridiculous bringing it up, but the pillars on the loggia on the upper floor, they look round, and it just sort of seems like square ones would fit with everything else better. I'm not sure.
Again, not close-minded here on that, and not to, respect your opinions on that.
Hang on a second. As an architect, I just got back from Tuscany. You won't find a square pillar in the entire region.
Well, sure.
That's where that came from. So let's respect not this moment, but 2,000 years plus.
We did go through some classic architectural books until we found what really fit in there, and we felt this is the most, the best one to serve on.
It's really an opinion thing, but I figured I'd bring it up. Sorry for jumping around. I meant to kind of put this all in a list, but I just did not have time. I think that was the bulk of my concerns for the moment.
Mine's neat and clean.
Yeah, I mean, I'll acknowledge that the scale is still large. I'm mostly, since that building in the back got moved further away from the neighborhood, I've had significantly fewer concerns about that.
You ready? Ms. Shadle, are you ready?
Absolutely.
I'm sure
And
I'll
I
take us
promise
on
I'm
that.
not gonna repeat anything as we ask those that come to the mic not to repeat. I too will not repeat. But I do think more.
I might suggest, honestly,
Mhm.
Even if it's an abbreviated statement, we're taking it.
If it's different, absolutely. If it's different than what I've said before, you will know, I promise. But I think more than anything else, tonight continues to prove and to show us that this is a process. It continues to be a process, and more discussion is going to occur, based on what we're talking about tonight. So I too appreciate what's been done with the townhouses. I think you've taken the feedback from both ends of the table on that and melded that together quite well. I think we're very close as far as the townhouses go. I personally like to see the townhouses there. I've said that from the beginning. I think they do make a nice transition. And I think as far as the materials on both the main building and the townhouses, I think you've taken that feedback as well, and I'm very happy to see where you're at with that. And really, other than the information that you've received from DPW, the fire inspector, and whatnot, certainly those items need to be addressed. But more discussion is needed. But overall, I don't think that my thoughts really have changed other than what I've expressed in the past, and some of the things that we're clearly going to continue to talk about as we move forward. Thank you.
Are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right.
So, again, as I've said in the past, I'm not a big fan of the ephes on the building. I could see it as in
That's
like
what I
the stair
forgot,
towers
thanks.
and all that, but I'm just not a big fan of it.
Well,
And
we brought you the white brick. You want
yeah, I'd rather see that. I would rather see that. And part of my concern is a lot of the areas that you have the ephes, there's balconies. You're going to have a lot of potential damage there.
Got the same issues and same cost. Give us some exact direction so we don't have any confusion and there's no contingencies.
I want to see all brick.
Gentlemen?
Yeah.
All right.
And I actually like the penthouse there in the center.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said I like the penthouse in the center tower. I like that. The other things from some of the public comments, I'd like to see, maybe this is more to our city manager, if we could get what the Washtenaw County stormwater retention standards are.
Worth it.
That might even be something one of our planners here can dig up for us.
I just want to make sure that, I think I saw Eddie's head go down and him start writing on that, so.
Okay, good, all right.
But this is not to be argumentative. There was a purpose behind the county.
Yeah.
And that was provide green space first for the entire area.
Right.
So
We got it.
could do
Yep.
this. I just
Yeah, I'm just curious as to see. I might even research it myself. So, I like that you put the grid in the parking area to let vines grow up over it. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
The one thing, the elevations are great, but because we're in H shape now, we're not seeing what those elevations are looking like real clearly, you know?
I mean, we can do, it's the 3D images.
Right,
that,
yeah.
you know, and we can take a couple different angles.
Yep.
I can tell you they really won't give you still 100% of their vision, but we can.
Back to the end one, the last one.
Yeah, okay.
Fun.
Yeah, I mean, some of the
Keep
3Ds
going.
you can kind of see what's
That
going
one,
on, but,
the 3D aerial.
Oh, the 16054.
yeah, the
There-
aerial.
16054.
There we go. Just leave that one up there. Just leave that up there.
What this doesn't show, there's texture on the sides now. You can barely see it. It
Yeah.
bumps out and bumps out.
Yep.
So every color is a different plane, if you will,
Right.
on the street.
Yep,
And
no.
the center parapet actually comes up and down along with that bump out.
Right. Yeah, you can tell from the plans and then compare it to the
I mean,
elevation.
we can virtually turn it for you.
No, it's,
Okay. That's good. Next item, again, to see the scale, I'd like to see like a 3D view from, say, the residence on Oxford looking east.
Sure.
You know, maybe, you know, across the street from the townhomes or something like that. And then, again, the other thing, we did it for the previous proposal, I'd like to see a shadow study. Okay, just,
Easy enough.
yeah, I think you can do that. Now to the townhomes. I'm still not a big fan of them.
Okay.
So, and I guess we're seeing nice 3D views of apartment building. I'd like to see that, something like that of the townhomes. Because to me, they're still looking, like somebody just mentioned that big ridge running, you know, north-south or east-west. Again, it seems like it's flat, and it might not be. Okay, yeah, it's probably not, but it's just seeming that way right now.
This is already modeled in 3D. You can't see it yet?
Yeah, it's, but yeah. Yeah,
can
you
see the
can,
big
you can
ridge.
kind of see it a little bit, but,
You will.
yeah,
you can see the
okay.
big ridge.
And our porch ordinance, don't we allow up to an 8-foot deep porch?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
8 feet.
You certainly want something that's usable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, it's
exactly.
6
We
feet
have, like,
right now
5
if I'm,
meetings
if I,
about porches.
yeah,
6 feet's a tad narrow,
yeah.
What was a porch and what was a stoop?
I'd say go to 8 feet,
7
7
or
or
8,
8 feet,
if you have the,
if you have the room, if you have the room to do it.
It does allow 8 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's 8 feet.
Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
yeah,
I believe that line demarks the 25-foot setback, and the porch is into what is
yeah,
the...
but that's allowed up
Be
to 8
allowed.
feet in.
2 more feet on that porch, not a problem.
Okay, all right. And originally, I was kind of not a fan of the tables in the front, but it looks like from this plan, you're showing that you're kind of screening it with a hedge or,
Yes.
and some trees and stuff, so it'll be a little bit more private.
Well, and when you're standing, you'll be
Yeah,
over it. When you're
right.
sitting,
Exactly, so, and then Joe brought up the snow removal and the pet disposal. You know, because I noticed in the courtyard you had 4 or 5 trash cans, but I don't think that's the place to have
No,
that.
absolutely not.
I
No,
think-
we will have, just to address that now, these are details, they're not ones that we're going to ignore in any way, shape, or form. These will be items that will actually be in our leases of what will be not permitted.
Should be.
And we will be managing it. We will have security cameras that can identify people who are abusing it. There are many ways that, you know, this can happen. And again, any business is only good as it's managed.
Right.
We will ensure that it's managed to the extreme.
And other than that, I think everything else I had was covered, so.
Thank you. Kristen?
Okay, generally, I think the plans come a long way. I just have some general comments I wanted to note. A lot of the items that are being discussed, I do think are details you typically look at as part of a site plan instead of a concept plan. But I would encourage you to address some of those as much as you can. They're small items, they're easy to pick up. And I think they would go a long way to addressing some of the resident concerns. The townhome facade, I would echo everyone's statement about breaking that up a bit. Perhaps the 3D rendering will give us a better idea of how that will actually look. But the 2D, it's hard to see how that has any relief built into it. The pocket park, I like the pocket park design. I think that's come a long way. So that was good to see some more usable space with the game tables and things like that, something we don't really have in the city right now. I liked that you were working to save some of the existing street trees. It might be helpful to include them as part of the proposed site plan. It doesn't look like they're shown on there, so maybe show them a little bit differently.
Identify them?
Yeah, I was just looking.
They are.
Okay,
We'll identify them.
I was just looking, for example, at that pocket park.
This is the only, we're taking one that down there as we widen this to make it a little
Yep.
safer. We're gonna lose that one tree, but those are existing.
Yep, and I recognize that. I'm talking about, you're not showing them on this sheet here.
On this sheet.
Oh, that's neat.
So it doesn't give a clear representation of how much green space that you're actually having on the site. So maybe denote those a little bit differently on that sheet as well.
Okay.
In terms of the stormwater, one of the residents did mention detaining for off-site storm. I don't think that's something that's typically seen. I think the challenges of doing something like that with the existing grades and existing storm systems in place are really too difficult to overcome. But I would encourage you to look at integrating some of the best management practices that our engineering consultant noted. Stormwater is something that we're particularly concerned about here, and those are some easy things to add to the site. So I would encourage you to do that. The EFS, I was one of the people last time that said I really didn't like any EFS on the building. So I appreciate that the colors have been swapped a little bit. You have added a little bit more brick. Though the rear west elevation is still the one that has a huge expanse of EFS. So it would be nice to see some of that, I don't know what the color was, but have that elevation look similar to the 3 other elevations with the different color patterns.
Yeah, what you can't see is this portion right here. There's only 29%. There's less than 30% of the surface of this building now. See this? And frankly, again, I don't know that there's any contest here. If we want brick, we'll do it. We only did that to make. If you remember, it was an all brick building when we got here.
Yep.
You asked us to change it, and now we're going back to all brick with different colors.
Yep, and I'm the other 3 elevations I'm generally okay with. It's just that back elevation just doesn't look as broken up as some of the other ones because of the color pattern.
And I really do need to hear this from this board. If right here, as we did in the front, that's the entry to the back there. If there's a little roof canopy there, and you walk through the fountain and you go into the building, pull that out into the same color.
Yep.
Would be a no-brainer. The question is it brick or is it synthetic plaster?
So the bottom elevation there, that's brick, EFS, brick, EFS, brick, correct? So that's, I'm just saying to repeat something similar.
Yeah.
Yep, to repeat that same
I think
pattern
that
on the
same
back.
pattern would work, yep.
Okay, done.
Yep.
Now, are we keeping EFS or are we doing brick?
No, brick. Brick.
I'm okay with some EFS.
I'm thinking, in the penthouse area, it can be the EFS, that.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
You know, in my personal opinion, at 25%, I'm okay with about 25% EFS. That's just me, so you have to listen to the rest of the commission too. But I definitely think on that back elevation, there needs to be a similar pattern as far as the color pattern goes. I think that's all I had. I'm generally in support of the project. I just think you have a few details to pick up.
Mark, are you ready?
I don't know if I'm ever ready, but I'll give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
Well, just echoing my fellow commissioners' comments, I think this project has come a remarkable distance since it was first proposed to us. What I don't have a comment on is EFS versus brick. I am not an architect or a designer, and I don't have strong opinions about that topic personally. I would urge my fellow commissioners to avoid trying to design this building by committee. There's going to have to be some give and take on the final design of it. We may not all get what we would personally prefer. I think we all know that. So not really too many comments on the building design. I'll divide my comments into two parts. My big concerns about the project, I think, we've already talked about for several meetings, and it's my turn to compromise, I think. It would be ideal to me to lower the building one story. It would also be ideal for me to set it back from the street, perhaps 5 feet, something like that. But we've gone around and around on that. The big concession that the developer made was to move the entire apartment project to Coolidge to get it away from the neighborhood. And that goes a long way toward meeting my concern about building height. So I think I can live with that, although it wouldn't be my ideal in a perfect world. I think the traffic within the grounds of the project the flow makes a lot more sense now. I'll talk about that a little bit further as well. Getting to some specifics, which I suppose are still on the table. What happened to the idea of the green roof? Are you still doing that?
No. At one time, of course, we were going to use have a roof deck.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, it was something that we were going to try to use as a feature. Frankly, it's a very expensive product to put up there. It requires a lot more structural support. It causes for a roof, the membrane itself, to be of a different grade. All in all, it becomes expense, and it's one that now there's less purpose of. So we're putting that money, in essence, into a detention system that will still accomplish the same thing.
I'd like to see some facts and figures on that. I would like to see.
If I show them to you, I think you'd be able to very
Well, not just financial, but I'd like to know how much detention you would have gotten and how you're adding to the underground system to accommodate that. I think there's room on your end for some additions to your stormwater detention retention plans. Particularly if you're going to eliminate the green roof, which I thought was a very exciting idea at the time.
We did too. And
yeah.
It ended up to be a negligible amount of.
Again, I'd like to actually see some figures on that, if you wouldn't mind. In regards to the townhouses, I support the townhouses. I think they are a transitional element. I support my fellow commissioners' comments about the roof, modifying the roof. I would also like to see some additional definition between the units. I'd like to see a little more distinctiveness between the units. Just something to, I don't know if you could play around with the siding maybe a little bit, or the colors to make them.
There's coloration
Yeah.
for one. There's, we could certainly move in some fascia stone,
Yeah.
other elements like that. But it didn't carry across in Berkeley. It's interesting, because it was becoming a hodgepodge.
Let me bring that, it was a
Well,
hodgepodge. When you try to.
I don't want a hodgepodge, but I do want some, I don't want this kind of, the row house concept doesn't sit too well with me.
Let me bring the third dimension back. It's so much flatter than it is.
Okay, well, that could be.
I think you're
Yeah.
going to be very surprised.
Okay, that could be. The park, the public park, I like what you have done with that. I'm still concerned that that is an isolated space. I would like to explore ways to connect it with the rest of the site and the community a little bit better. I'd also like to see some more detail on your plans for green space. I split with I guess the sentiment of the community early on in concluding that you had given us adequate parking with your previous plan. I didn't think it was great, but I thought it was adequate. You now have surplus parking. I don't know why you couldn't at least think about converting some of that surplus to additional green space. Just as one possible example, where you have the dumpsters there, maybe you could bring the green back and put the dumpsters where you've got some parking, because you have some parking to play with.
This is green here, it's not colored, but it's green. That's planted right there. This is a completely planted edge here.
Okay.
This is completely replanted.
That's fine.
And that's planted, and that's planted. So there's more green there than immediately meets the eye.
Okay.
This was a focus on that particular thing.
There's a difference between what we have in the site plan. There'll be cut sheets with the landscape plans in there that'll show the details.
Well, I understand that, but I'm vocalizing what that I want to see. And
Just to understand, also, there was some concern about, for instance, the trees. There was a request for putting up some trees to block some of the blacktop over here, which we did. Now, we would have loved to have left this low and even make it into a biosphere if we could. But in order to lower this, it would kill the trees. If we had some kind of a sunken area, it would drown the trees. So they're always, there are things that,
trees play their own role in they play their own role in stormwater retention. I don't advocate getting rid of the trees.
And I'm just trying to explain to you that there has been some trade-offs as we try to study it further.
My other main thing, I guess, I've always had some question about the circular drive off Coolidge. How much dropping off do you think is really going to happen? I can see it on a Sunday afternoon. My point being, if there's not that much of it, could we consider moving it to the rear, where a lot of it's going to happen anyway, and then making that sidewalk continuous across the front facade? I'd like to keep the H design, but I don't know why the door couldn't just be a pedestrian entrance and not accompanied by a circular drive.
Because there's not parking on Coolidge, that's the reason for it, and it needs to move off of it. And I understand what you're saying, and I don't totally...
People could park behind, I think.
You don't want everybody coming through the neighborhood in the parking lot when you have a pretty easy...
But I don't, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't see a huge amount of this kind of traffic happening.
I think you may in the future, just if I can
Myers,
jump in.
Kroger,
You've got
they all deliver.
Uber, which I used to think was the Uber, but it's actually Uber. People are going to come and go, and anything you can do to relieve stress on Harvard and Oxford is a good thing. So if somebody's going to drop, pick up, ideally, it's done off Coolidge.
Don't leave your home anymore. Kroger
I would just like to, you know, that oval drive is gonna, I would like more connectivity with that park, and I think that oval drive kind of helps to cut the park off.
Yeah, I'm going to butt in before I forget, but I think that this semicircular drive also addresses the building, its relationship to the street.
I agree.
Otherwise, you don't have that, you know, all the other functional things it may or may not do. I think aesthetically, it's a big part of how this building addresses Coolidge Highway.
A driveway is aesthetic
Well,
value?
it's not a driveway. I mean, it's a grand entry. And, you know, if it was a driveway, we'd have a sidewalk going up to the building. You know, we do a lot of big buildings
Okay.
for a lot of different clients, and they all want a circular drive in front, whether they get used or not. It's an aesthetic announcement of that building to the street and its neighborhood.
It's a handshake.
It really is, it really is. Ties it together.
Well, that's my opinion.
Let Mark
I'm
finish.
sticking to it. And let me just see if I got anything else here. Well, I echo the comments on snow removal. I think that's a very important topic. Well, that's about it. Like I say, parking isn't as big a worry to me as it is to many people, I guess, because I think of things like Uber and developments like that. And I would encourage more green space. Think about not having to immediately utilize all of that parking if you've got a surplus. And think about some minor, perhaps, ways of greening up some of that space.
Mr. Smith?
Okay, my notes, I just make notes on sheets as I go, so it may seem a tad random, but as I go through the sheets. What happened to your civil engineer? Doesn't appear on here anymore, and I asked for a reason.
As a matter of improving our team, we
Okay.
found someone that
Okay.
has been extremely deep,
The reason I,
extremely experienced.
the reason I ask is on the site plan, there's a lot of boundary lines. I'm guessing this certain line is the right-of-way line, this other line may be a setback line, but there's very few dimensions on here. And there's very few indication of what these lines are. There's no meets and bounds or boundaries or anything. I'd like to see, really, before I approve this, I'd like to see some of that civil, and it doesn't have to be, we're not looking for all the information, but I'd like to see some civil representation of the site. Just the earlier thing we had tonight, you know, I asked about where it was with respect to the right-of-way, and some of the more observant planning commissioners actually saw the front of the building in the daylight and noticed that it was set back. I didn't see that, but I see some dotted lines here, and the building protrudes past those. I don't know what that is, you know, so.
Is there a line for the old school?
Just as you are noticing right now, we recognize that there was some missing information on the old survey, and subsequently, we had to improve upon that. That's why we made changes, and what you are seeing in there is correct, that there are some meets and bounds and topo that were missing. There was a lot of information that was missing about where some of the utility lines were coming in and going out to, so we had to improve upon it.
Okay.
Let me add something. The one dotted line you might be looking at is where the school is right now relative to the new building.
I realize there's a dotted line back from the right-of-way line.
That's it. That's the outline of the school.
Is that
We
the
were
school?
asked-
But that's listed, that's listed.
That's listed.
We were asked to put that on there.
No, I'm talking about.
He's talking about the one that runs like north-south
Yeah.
across
I
the,
know that's the school line. This is probably the right-of-way line.
Is that
I
the
don't know what
setback
that
required by the
is.
existing
You're
district?
protruding past it. So those things I don't know, and it doesn't matter now. I just want to have some kind of a plan that describes all that.
One of the packages you have an Alta survey.
Okay.
That Wellheads gave us the meets and bounds and Alta survey. It was distributed once. This is going on
Understood.
over a year now. I'll bring it back next
I'd like to see some simple civil showing these buildings
Thank you.
on it, okay? And with some dimensions, you know, boundaries as we talked about, you know, we have to get into eventually utilities and topo and all that stuff. We heard some things tonight about turning radiuses. I think we beat the storm detention to death. Snow removal, snow storage, and then poop control, we talked about that too. So the zoning line, you know, that's a pretty important line. not so much in the PUD, but I think we'd like to know where that zoning line is. I think I know where it is, but. Good. And again, I'm not looking for a fully engineered plan like some communities at this point. I'd like to see a civil plan with these buildings represented.
Would you like to see them in an overlay, or would you like to see them, I mean, you have the ability to open up a lot more than perhaps some of the other members here. We can prepare.
Whatever you share for one, you have to share for all.
Right.
So it has to be in a form that we all can see it.
And and again, I'm just going through my plan here. You've done a fine job on this, on the apartment building. Every time I see it, gets a little better. We'll get into that a little later. With our little island out here, I think the circular drive is important for obvious, not obvious, but for the reasons we discussed. Keep the sidewalk continuity, the public sidewalk. I think that's very important. We'd all like more green space, but people walk up and down these streets. We're a so-called walkable community. Keep that sidewalk, and I think you have to, actually. You're going to have a transformer or two on this site. I don't see them anywhere. Are you going to have a generator?
We hadn't come to that decision
Okay.
yet.
Those take up space.
Understood. We have, through some of our engineering, our preliminary engineering, we have identified transformer locations we think
Mhm.
make the most sense.
But those are the kind of things that'd be good to.
Well, yeah, we didn't want to.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand. And I'm not sure that's the best location of the dumpsters. I think you have an abundant, believe it or not, I honestly think you have an abundance of parking now. There may be another location for it. You'll lose a couple parking spots, but there may be another location. I don't know if that's a concern to everybody else. Just consider it.
Again, not to be argumentative, but from a logical standpoint, this is being closed.
Mhm.
It is a location that the truck has an opportunity to back into and load.
Oh, yeah, that's fine, but I mean.
You've got other places that they could do
There may
that.
be other places.
We're asking everybody to take their trash out.
Not necessarily. We may be having a trash room and subsequently not.
Okay.
I think for the sake of many of the people here, most of the people, someone mentioned a street view including the neighboring buildings. I think that's a good idea. This is a big building. And I think it'd be a good thing to see. I'm on the facade sheet now. The dimensioning on here is a little confusing. If you could clear it up, it's hard to read, and it's a little confusing. You have a string of vertical dimensions on here. I like what you've done. Brick, tan, brick, tan, brick. I don't care if it's EIFS. I don't care if it's brick. EIFS wasn't forged by the devil. It has good stuff. But I like the color. You have two reds, orange type things.
Yeah.
I like what you've done with the color combination. They can argue and vote about whether it's EIFS or brick. Doesn't matter to me. And I think a couple of commissioners mentioned on the west elevation, bring the red, orange into that large middle element. I think that's a good idea. But I think all the orange-red is representative as brick, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And I think you've resolved the north and south elevations. Those were the ones I was really concerned about. Parking screening, that's a definite improvement over what you had before. I want to question these lights. Can't you use recessed fixtures instead of these stupid things hanging down?
These are shiny.
Shield them, do something.
Oh, these
We
are
don't want
shielded.
people.
No, these are shielded.
They're shielded. They
It
don't
looks
look
like a bulb.
I know, but
Okay.
they're internally shielded. They are internally shielded. Yeah.
Okay,
I just have a diffuser that
okay,
protrudes down.
I looked at it quickly. And get some building dimensions on here, please, on all these plans. And I know you haven't changed the interior of the units yet. I don't think your unit count is exactly right. The total's right, as far as 1 beds, 2 beds, and so on. I think you're a little off. but the total, the 134 seems to be correct. And I know these aren't the final unit plans.
They aren't, they gotta do A's, B's.
Yep. And you answered a question I had. You're thinking of going with a rooftop chiller system?
We think we are not completed with it. We're listening to several different consultants, but we're leaning that way right now. But we also need to look into that. It's going to be this is what we feel is the Cadillac of the systems, and we do want it to last. We also want to ensure that we can maintain it properly, have a long life expectancy, and that we can meter these properly.
But if you do go to the Magic Packs, or whatever they call them now, Johnson Aries, show them.
Yeah.
Show them on the elevations, because that becomes a element on the plan.
They still show them.
You might have them on one or two of the elevations, but not all of them. Yeah, but just get it right. Now, with everything I said about the improvement of the apartment building, I don't like the condo building. Maybe the 3D will help. My comment again says it's welcome to the 80s.
I don't think that's fair.
Well, that's my comment, I'm sorry. Now, you know, on the big building, you broke up the heights of the roof with those parapets and the things. Yeah, this is a straight line.
Right.
Please do something with it, and if you can.
I think you'll find a much more textured approach.
Fair enough. And I may... Yeah, and I had a note here, I believe the city council banned fire pits. So, are these, is this?
And again, not to misspeak here, but I think it was relative to
Wood.
Wood.
Right.
Ours is intended to be gas.
Right, that's fine.
And we, this is a feature we'd like to offer. If we think that's going to be a problem, the other eliminating problem.
You mentioned gated, this gate here going into this rear courtyard. Is I might have asked you last time and I don't recall. Is the parking gated? Because you have all this, I sense you have security here, but a bad guy, if there is one in Berkeley, could wander around inside the parking lot.
That's correct. Can you get into the building?
No.
The answer is no. To gate the entry to that is probably something that's going to cause a backup. You're not wrong in what you're saying.
Very unhappy tenant who lives above it.
Yeah, they're allowed
Up
to.
and down.
Yeah. Just asking, especially in weather like this, when the grease freezes up and.
We will have cameras.
Okay. Just asking, because you talk a lot about security, and there's a good place for.
Health and safety are
Yep.
chief.
Yep. And I like what you've done in on the south courtyard. I'm not going to argue about trees and plants. I pretty much mow grass, and that's about it. What are these in the middle here? What are these little colorful sculpture things?
Flagpole and a.
I see a flagpole. This is art. Okay.
Putting some sculptures in there.
Okay.
They won't,
Other artwork.
they won't be made of EFS.
What?
The flagpole is going to be, is one that has already been dedicated by the veterans, and
I don't.
we're going to be relocating.
Perfect. Okay, those are basically my notes. Some are big deals, some I disagree with people. Mostly I agree with what everybody said. So those are my comments. I said, those are my comments. A lot of them are some large, mostly small. Like I said, it doesn't matter to me if it's brick or EIFS. You're using thin brick. That has thin brick has some of the same issues that EIFS has at balconies and doors and things. So it doesn't matter to me. I know the cost is very similar. And structurally, it's not going to make a significant difference to hold up half-inch brick over the EIFS. So I don't have an issue either way with that. I do like it that it's broken up, and thank you for doing that. You did a good job breaking that up.
Okay, so I'm disappointed about the green roof, but I understand the structural issues and the cost issues, and I expect to see that it's going to be made up for in stormwater detention. When you get to your 3D model, I'd like to see Harvard Commons in there, so a current aerial being used. No, I don't see it from that slide. What's the slide number?
Slide number, please.
16054.
Thank you.
Oh, no, it's not in the Google mapping yet.
I understand. Go stand up on the top of, or send up a drone. Get a picture.
It's very difficult to try and import something completely fabricated. It's amazingly difficult when we get a.
I understand. I get it.
What we did the site plan. We did the site plan from drawings because it's not even in the Oakland County or the aerials yet.
I understand.
But it was important to see the general juxtaposition.
So the next team member that you add, when they have a surveying crew, make sure that they have that 3D laser scanning with the little drone that can pick it up.
We wanted to show it because actually it would be to our benefit.
Well, I don't know if it's be to your benefit or not. I just think it's in context of the neighborhood, and I think it gives perspective, and it also, helps us. It just seems like it's absent. So I'm just.
We'll give it a go because
okay.
it would help the texture.
Thank you. Thank you. Other than that, I like the townhouses where they are. I agree on the roof height. I don't like that single ridge down the middle, but I'm not sure, except for the people in Oxford Towers who would see the ridge from that far below because of the different, architectural elements. But, oh yeah, from the top of the apartment building, you're going to see that kind of long ridge. So I don't know. I think you had it broken up at one time. People kind of beat you up for it. Now it's single, and I do think I like the front facade because I do think it matches the character of Berkeley. And I would like to iterate one more thing is that I do think this matches the master plan. I'm not sure that the master plan is like a fluid blueprint, and it's a guide, and it does change with time, and it gets interpreted. But I don't think the idea was that Coolidge became one giant residential street. And we need something to feed those businesses. And yes, we do have a lack of, we have low vacancy rates on Coolidge, but I think every business owner there would ask for more and more customers to make them more robust, and also to supplement our 12-mile and our 11-mile. We have a new restaurant that's going to be open probably later than 10 in the morning, I think, when the Nip and Tuck closes or something.
I could never get in there. They're always closed when I went.
Yeah.
Because you were going on weekends.
But I am less worried about the stormwater because I know we have a robust ordinance and engineers who are going to make that happen for us. I think the parking is resolved. I think we're going to see less and less parking, quite frankly. I think with ride sharing and a robust bus route up and down Coolidge. I mean, we seem to have a few more buses have added in. Depending on where they're working, I think this is I think this could be a nice ad. I think it is a tall building, but it works, at least with this view, and when I stand there and look at it, I think it works for the space. I am conscious of what the neighbors across the street. I do think, at least for the houses where they start, that's going to improve the view of the townhouses over the kind of empty parking lot, empty school building now. I mean, I think it could be a very good ad for our community and the residents that we could welcome to our community to share in being a member of Berkeley. Mr. Smith.
I blew by one thing here. Mr. Tangari mentioned something about reversing the drive directions in the southwest parking lot. And because of where the egress point is to Harvard. Now, I think that's a possibility. Look at it, please. If there's a reason you can't.
There's no reason. We've already actually made a drawing to that effect. We didn't want to divert any of the attention today with a new drawing, but it's something that we would like to show that we do believe is an improvement.
Okay.
And to appease my neighbor to my left, who I fully respect but don't always agree with, I'm going to agree with something here. You know, I recalculate, I mentioned earlier that your unit plans, yeah, I know they're not updated, and that's fine. I recounted what the parking will be, and you have 206 recommended spaces. I come up with about 225, give or take, whatever. You're providing 267, 268.
268, yeah.
Now, this last parking row to the west is a single-loaded parking row. The only thing beyond it is the
Land bank.
land bank, thank you. I'm trying to read that little line there. Thanks. There's a possibility, I'm just throwing this out after listening to my neighbor here speak. We could get, if we could land bank that last westerly row and that drive, you lose 17 spaces, you're down to 250. I have 225, you have 206, whatever it is. We still have plenty of parking.
We have the
Just a
church,
thought.
we have the church on High Holy Days,
Well,
so
I know that.
I just
I
want
know
to,
that.
you know, we want to minimize the impact
understand that.
to the church, that they would have to have alternative transportation and off-site parking.
I understand
But
that.
I,
I'm
yes,
just
you're
throwing it
correct,
out.
we could maybe
Part of
improve
my-
green
yep.
space, I agree.
Part of my job here is to think out of the box.
We beat them up over parking, now we have parking.
Well,
now
I
we're like,
beat
"Take
them up the
parking away."
worst over parking, and now I'm reversing what I said. But
Okay.
Just to make mention, we do already have an agreement with the church.
then, okay,
Yeah,
fair enough.
okay.
Fair enough.
Let's keep moving forward. All right, Marty, is that it?
Yeah, until I think of something else.
Okay. Well, that might have to wait till next session.
Yeah.
So,
Mention one more
I
thing.
appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the candid comments from the community, and we continue to see improvement on this. Mr. Tangieri?
I'd just like to mention one more thing. It's about traffic, because traffic did come up, and I feel like we kind of should address it. I just kind of want to talk about why I'm basically okay with the number of units on the site with respect to traffic. And the reason is that when I look at the current zoning with its mix of multifamily and office, and then I look at this, I see the current zoning, if it were developed to the maximum as currently permitted, would create much bigger traffic problems than what's being proposed here.
Much.
Especially at
Like-
rush hour.
like
yeah.
Much bigger.
way, like the office alone
Yeah.
would be way, way bigger.
150 spaces approximately.
Exactly. So there is a certain amount of perspective, I think, that comes from that analysis. And I just wanted to throw that out there, that we're not glossing over the issue, that actually the current zoning is probably a problem in terms of traffic at this site, if it were to be developed that way.
That would be worse.
What's being proposed here is actually significantly less impactful than what could be built under the current zoning.
And it is actually an argument for the use of a PUD.
It is, actually, yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for that point. I think that was a good point.
Very good point.
All right, you can have one last. You get the last one.
I brought it up in the past, I'm gonna bring it up again, since you're removing the green roof. Are you gonna consider some sort of solar panels or a solar roof?
At this point, we hadn't really considered it. Where we had considered it is if in the future, and not to dismiss it right now and gloss over that point. Should we put in any carports, we would think that would be a better location.
Sure.
Okay, all right.
It's something we.
Because they would kind of be hidden from everybody, because it's a tall building, and other than Oxford Towers, nobody else would see them up there. So,
It's
okay.
something, we'll look into it. I
All
mean,
right.
We're gonna have service up to the roof anyway, so,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it could be something that could be added in the future, too. All right, that was it.
All right, very good. So we're moving on from this. So, Mr. Baumgarten, I assume that Berkley Commons LLC will get a letter with all of our notes, or they will watch the video and make sure they've captured everything. And we will have a public hearing next meeting on the 23rd of January.
Is there any consideration to the second Tuesday, which would be the 9th?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm fine with that if the other commissioners are open.
Yeah.
The applicant be ready.
The applicant will be ready.
All right, so
do it in March.
January 9th.
Is there a reason we're moving it
Would that be a
to
special
the
meeting,
9th?
or would we still have one on the 23rd?
You would have, the January meeting would be the second
Okay.
second Tuesday.
To the 9th.
Why is that?
Just advance the whole thing 2 weeks?
So, sorry?
Do you have to 30 days?
Move everything up 2 weeks?
Yeah, so we've been,
Was that enough time to get it public
there was
noticed?
enough time to get it publicized, yes.
All right.
Why are we
fine.
moving it from the 4th?
We don't have it on the, what do you mean the 4th? Oh, from the 4th Tuesday? It's because,
Why are we doing that? I just want to know.
Well-
I'm not objecting necessarily.
So,
We're now doing it the second Tuesday?
yeah, well, I know you guys had talked about doing, if not the 4th, then the 2nd, so if we can get this noticed, if they can get everything returned back in time, we can do it the 9th and get it done.
'cause remember, it still has to go through us, and then it has to go to city council. I mean, there's
I'm
a-
not objecting. I just
Okay,
wondered why
okay.
we're changing the schedule, that's all.
To
It's
accommodate.
simpler.
Like I said, originally, we intended, this would be one of 2 hearings. We weren't able to do a hearing tonight. Then it'd be the next available opportunity. So just, again, trying to keep a promise to the residents, I guess.
Okay.
Are
Madam
you,
Chair?
is the commission available on the 9th?
I can be, but tonight was a good discussion. I'm glad it wasn't the hearing. We got more information, and I think the client or the applicant will be better served next meeting.
And by the same token, just to reverse it, you can, from our perspective, these kinds of open sessions are much, much, much more helpful. Is in the hearing where there's a lack of a circular conversation, there's a breakdown on trying to give feedback and explain or clarify sometimes.
Well, if I could ask the applicant, are you now ready for a public hearing? Okay.
Yeah,
And that's your requesting that we schedule? Okay.
Yeah, we are, and we've taken copious notes of everybody's concerns, I think, as we tried to in the past. And, there's a lot of commonality and things that have been said, and these are well taken. None of them are anything, for the most part, that we can't work with you about.
Okay, to that end, so our next meeting will be January 9th at 7:30. Tuesday, January 9th. Did I get that correct? Yes. And we will have the public
Properly
hearing then.
noticed public
And
hearing.
also, do you want to talk with Mr. Eby to see if he'll be ready for his site plan review? Because if not,
Yes.
he'll get pushed into late February.
Okay, I will definitely follow up with them.
Okay.
We will have also probably had some time with public safety as well as follow-ups with
We expect that everything is addressed, and that the public is also happy with your revised plans and whatnot. All right, liaison reports. Chamber?
Chamber, I did attend 2 meetings, actually.
Thank you.
I am pulling my notes out here. So at the chamber meeting on the 8th and also last Wednesday.
Say that again. Yeah, he did.
Let's see.
He was very thorough.
So they're and this is something that actually a lot of people could take advantage of. They're doing something called an Explore Berkley gift certificate. They currently have 33 different merchants participating. Some of the funds raised from this go to the Berkley Educational Foundation, so you can buy a gift certificate. and use it in any one of those 33 businesses.
Okay.
So denominations are $5, $10, $20, and $25. So, and they don't expire.
Okay.
So, go get those. They're doing a hometown art thing in February.
Gentlemen.
And
Gentlemen, please.
they're talking about doing some sort of a scavenger hunt event the
Gentlemen.
week of January 20th through the 28th.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Environmental Committee?
Yes, the Environmental Committee did meet on November 16th, and our guest for that meeting was the Honorable Mr. Baumgarten, the city manager. We did have an extensive discussion about the sustainability plan that the committee is proposing. Plan, I would call it a conceptual piece at this point rather than a plan, but we presented that to Mr. Baumgarten, discussed with him. He has since reviewed that plan. I think I don't know if he has any comment about it, but I think we're looking forward to for some guidance from himself and the city council about where to take that next. We also had an extensive discussion apropos of this meeting about stormwater issues and a number of different ideas for best management practices, soft infrastructure, alternatives like that were discussed, and some possibilities for obtaining grants to do that kind of work. 319 grant from DEQ was one specific thing we talked about. And actually, U.S. Forest Service has grants available for urban forestry alternatives. Another topic was the future of Coolidge Avenue, and we discussed the DDA's negotiations or discussions with Huntington Woods and Oak Park about the possibility of narrowing Coolidge from 696 up on through Berkley. That's, again, not a done deal, but it's an idea that's under discussion by the three communities. Do you have anything to add?
I would really like to compliment yourself and Dave and Brandon and Karen and Haley. You guys did phenomenal work on this. I was excited to read it. It's well written. I think it outlines really just a fantastic step towards sustainability. It's going to complement well on the plan that you worked on at your former firm, and there's good things coming with it. I actually had a big grin on my face reading the whole thing, so my compliments to that body.
Thank you, and we're looking to build on the work that Michelle was involved with. Take it to the next step. So.
DDA?
DDA?
Well, there's a lot going on at the DDA. I'm just going to hit the headline item, though. DDA is at long last closing in on the final design of wayfinding signage, and starting to look at phasing. The locations are pretty much established, as is the messaging on the signs for the most part. So we're looking at trying to move toward implementation sometime soon. Finding the funding and actually getting some wayfinding signs in the ground at some point in the near future.
Okay. ZBA?
Just one thing I want to comment on. We had a ZBA meeting yesterday. We had an applicant who had installed a swimming pool without pulling a permit. And traditionally, we try to work with an applicant to find a solution to a problem that they've got. And in this case, the pool was constructed too close to a fence and too close to a couple of structures.
Dug themselves a hole.
Could not find a way to resolve the issue. Operant point is anybody that's going to spend more than a couple dollars on any kind of a home improvement really would be well served to come and talk to the building department, see if a permit is required, learn about, you know, what it's going to take to get a job done, because I felt horrible, because there's going to be a significant cash outlay for somebody that was trying to do something good, and could have saved huge headaches if they had, you know, done a little homework first.
They have to fill in part of it?
It's an above-ground pool, and, you know, oddly enough, an installer put this pool in directly under an overhead power line, which the applicant then had moved, and then the city electrical inspector came out and said, guys, you need a permit for this pool. It's not compliant, and they walked him through the process of ZBA, but the point is, anything more than a few dollars, get the permit first, or find out if you need one. This is just, it's sad. And there is no good way to resolve it.
That definitely needs a permit. Okay.
Ms. Chairman?
Yes?
I attended the last two city council meetings, and it was really just to see, the November 20th was swearing in the new council members and mayor, and then the 4th of December was, they discussed the procedure for the empty. And it was interesting, and there were apparently six applicants that spoke on the 4th, and I don't think they've made their decision yet. That's pending. But I just did it just to find out the system, how they do it. I also attended on I think my cousin Dean Smith was there, the library, regarding a micro, it was a
Rain barrels and swales
rain barrels and
presentation.
backwater check valves. It's kind of a microcosm or micro environment of what residents can possibly do to alleviate stormwater and backups. And the program coordinator for the Clinton River Watershed Council was there also, but she had about a minute left when she got up there. But she has a wealth of information if anybody's interested in that. But they sold a lot of rain barrels.
Yeah, well, the rain barrel guy was fascinating.
Yeah, he was.
And the plumbing contractor talked about the check valves. Again, if you're going to put in a check valve, make sure you get a licensed plumber, because if those things are not put in right, it's a bigger problem.
It's a bigger
And I think
problem.
Berkeley is waiving the permit fees, if I'm correct.
That is correct.
on
Thank
the
you for
check valve
mentioning that. Through
installation.
February
So come get a
28th.
permit, put your
And-
check valve in, get it inspected,
And
you get your permit fee back.
realize that.
Don't pay for your check valve, though.
No. And realize on top of having a professional put it in, it's going to take probably a yearly maintenance.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not something you put in and forget about, because that's just that's a disaster waiting to happen.
My notes, capital letters, flushables are not.
Right, I remember that, so.
Giant news report on that recently.
Yeah, flushables have caused issues in metropolitan areas and rural areas. Anybody that's got an impeller wheel, at any part in their system, pumps, flushables are not flushable. It's a buzzword to sell product. They're not flushable.
I learned that the hard way and a backup in my basement.
And while we're at it, don't put fat in your garbage disposal.
Yes, that too, that too. All right, so, do we need to go around the room one more time? Or does everybody feel talked out at 11:22?
I have nothing to add. I guess we have a holiday coming up before we meet again, so.
All right.
There's that.
So on behalf of the City Council, I'd like to wish everybody Merry Christmas and our very intrepid remaining
Planning
audience.
Commission?
Sorry, the Planning Commission, I'm
Well,
sorry.
you just
Lisa.
revealed your ambitions.
Yes, no, absolutely not, no, thank you, no. On behalf of the Planning Commission, it's because I'm tired and delirious at this hour, and our intrepid audience of the two members that are, of the public who are
Thank
still
you.
with us, thank
Thanks
you.
for sticking it
And those
out.
at home, thank you.
The ones that spoke tonight, thank
Merry
you.
Christmas. I will entertain an motion to dismiss, or
So moved.
to adjourn, sorry.
So moved.
Support.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.